Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 84th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we have a viewer-submitted spell today. It is made by the BBEG for the BBEG. And we are going to dive right into that because we have no other further updates, but we have Cruxford's Crafty cheat. And that was submitted to us by KosmycPurge. So we are going to dive right into it. We've been waiting for this one for like a week or two.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
How was your weekend, by the way?
Oh, it was chill. It was chill. We've been doing all right. I got to watch my nieces play, and what did I watch? Oh, my lady wanted to go watch the Spy Family movie. It came out in theater. It's a weird anime. It's actually really cute.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
like a movie though, like anime movie?
Exactly. Yes, it was an anime movie. It was in theater. It was pretty chill.
Was it a school play?
It was a school play, yes.
Famous one, or
she's a senior, so it was like last day of school is what it was called.
Oh, okay, so more of a like a modern one, not necessarily
yes.
a classic.
Exactly. But no, it was pretty cute. It was nice. It was
all
really
right.
nice.
Not too bad. All right. Yeah, I didn't do. We did yard work.
Yard work?
Yeah, we had landscapers over and did yard work.
Oh, right on. That sounds like a lot of fun.
One more thing to do.
Of course.
House ownership is just one project after another.
I mean, is it worth it?
Oops. I didn't mean to do that.
What do we do?
I think I just cleared chat, by the way. My bad.
I can still see it.
Well, you're a mod, so you should be able to see it. I think I just accidentally nuked chat. Yep, I just nuked chat.
R.I.P. Well,
my bad. I was moving my phone and I hit my stream deck and I just nuked chat.
Sorry.
Yeah. So by the way, that's what happens if things go wrong in chat. I can do that.
Okay. Good to know.
Yep. Whoopsie.
What is happening? Why are we not coming up on the stream for me?
I say I'm live. Cosmic's in chat, so
yeah, but I just can't see us.
You can't see us?
I just can't see us.
Go to the Discord and click on the link there.
That's fair.
See if that will take you there.
Super weird.
Cosmic says try refreshing. How's it going, Cosmic? Glad to see you. I know you're excited about today. Won't be taking too long to get into it. Just want to make sure that everything's good with the stream. Well, yeah, we already got it up. We got everything going on.
Well, that worked.
Going to be an interesting conversation. Okay, you got in?
I got in.
All right, fantastic. All right, so Cosmic's already here, so we don't have to wait any longer. So here we are. There we are, Cruxford's Crafty cheat. Just so you know, Cosmic, this started a very, very hefty debate before stream. So
it was
I got one piece of information as I was pulling it up, and that started, I think, a half-hour-long debate between us. Not one we're going to repeat here on stream, because it was more semantical about our different approaches to historical D&D lore and just in general approaches to interpretation, I guess, of D&D is really what it comes down to. So we're not going to go over that one, but it definitely is quite. It will come up at least on stream in terms of the general topic that we discussed. But yeah, that was it was quite interesting. But yeah, normally I don't get any kind of insight, but when I pulled it up, I saw one piece, and as I was pulling up reference material for it, yeah, we started chit-chatting about it and realized that so we still have a lot of differences in how we approach D&D. But that's the great part. That's actually one of the best parts about doing this with each other is, as much as we agree on things, we agree, but our approach is different. We hit the same target, but we come from completely different directions.
And that happens a lot. And, again, the biggest thing for me, and one of the things that I love about what we do here is that one of the biggest, what we do is we're here to share our ideas and our information and to help other people see D&D in a different way, right? Yeah. Again, we talk about beyond the book, like just more to it than just that. But at the same time, a lot of what we pull comes from the books, and helping us understand what is there is also important. So there's a whole learning aspect to it that I feel is valuable as well. And that is what is one of the biggest things that I enjoy about all the stuff that we do when it comes to homebrew review all the way to the deeper discussions is we're hopefully learning more and actually getting to figure that stuff out.
Absolutely. So Cruxford's Crafty cheat. So I'm assuming that Cruxford is the BBEG. So that's our main guy. And as far as I understand, the only premise that I've been given is that this is the BBEG from Cosmic's setting, and they spent I forget exactly how long he said, but several hundred or 1,000 years crafting this spell, working on this spell until it got to this point. So this is an in-game lore-based BBEG spell made by them. So it's not like, this is going to be kind of interesting, right? Because it's not necessarily going to be like a standard level 9 spell that is just in the world. There are scrolls that exist. This is like,
he's the only person that knows how to cast this spell.
And it was made specifically for him for a purpose. So we will have to kind of go into it from that point of view. And not so much the point of view of, how universally acceptable this would be in like a standard game.
For sure. Okay.
Excellent. But it is a level 9 spell submitted to us by KosmycPurge. So, getting into this. So, we have a range of self. However, it does say a 1 mile radius sphere centered on the caster. So, that's going to be kind of interesting. I don't know what that exactly means. So, he casts the range of self, but it's a 1 mile radius sphere.
So it's almost like, imagine like if you were to cast darkness on yourself, but there would be a radius sphere that it would emit around you. So the range is
self, but then it creates a sphere, a 2 mile radius or 2 mile diameter sphere centered on them. 1 mile radius, so 2
yes,
mile.
Yes.
Okay, so a 2 mile sphere, boom.
That's a large area.
That's huge. Now, granted, I mean, we're talking about level 9. That feels right. I'd be very curious to know what the standard ranges are for other level 9 spells in terms of their effective range. Something tells me, like, something's like tugging on me. Maybe a mile, like, total would have maybe felt better for a level 9 spell.
So like half a mile radius?
I mean, because you think about what a mile is, right? You think about the average like D&D town, and you think about like a level 9 spell being cast in the middle of town. How much damage or, how much effect do you think a level 9 spell should have on the average town? So I'm trying to think of like in that scale, 2 miles, like I would say for the average D&D town, that's everything. That's like going all the way out to the farmland.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like it might be touching the edge of the farmland, but
I would be curious to look at a couple.
Yeah, so it would be kind of curious. I am really interested to see here. Let's see. Here we go. So other level 9 spells. Other ranges, we have like 10 feet, 60 feet, 120, 1,000 feet. Okay, so that's just like the general range. But these are, again, a lot of these aren't necessarily...
areas of effect, but like range you can cast it to.
Exactly. So there is a big difference there. Ranged spells versus area of effect spells, hugely different. So yeah, something tugs at me. I just as a knee-jerk reaction, I think I would have rather seen a quarter mile or a half mile radius or just a mile diameter, but we'll see exactly what happens.
Okay.
All right, so we have components. So it is verbal and material. Okay. So verbal and material component.
Yes, no somatic.
So no somatic. That's... Okay, I have reservations on that one, but this kind of digresses into the conversation that we had before about our interpretations of what spells represent. And for me, for a level 9 spell, to be fair, let me look though, because there are other like verbal only and somatical only. What's interesting though, I guess there are some verbal only. There are no verbal material only though.
Yes,
that is unique.
It's a very unique combination.
So I'll give it that.
I'm not necessarily mad at it. But...
I'm not necessarily mad at it. I'm actually surprised that there are so many verbal only. Like I remember because when you look at this, it's primarily somatical. Like somaticals in almost all of them. Yep. So it's like my memory always says that somatical is always a huge component for like those higher level spells. Because even like 7th and 8th level spell, it's like 80-90% are all somatical.
I will say the one I am not surprised is only verbal is power word kill.
Power word kill, absolutely. Even though I think a lot of people like the idea of the finger gun. I think a lot of people like the idea of the finger gun.
That's very cool.
But that and wish. Those are the two.
That's actually fair.
Two that legit. I'm like, fair. Don't even talk to me.
It makes a lot of sense.
You. Which is funny though. Power word heal is a somatical, but I guess that you have to kind of direct.
Is it touch? Power word heal.
It's verbal and somatical.
No, but the spell
it is touch. That's okay. Why. Yeah. So okay. So yeah. So verbal material. good as an alternative because we haven't seen it yet. It isn't something out there, so it really doesn't feel that off. Okay, so Cosmic's giving us some information, but let's get ahead a little bit before we get that, because I think he's talking a little bit ahead of where we're at. So
got it.
So casting time. So casting time is going. Oh yeah. So we're still in the component. So it is verbal material. So the material is a 1 million platinum and a 50 gallon. So a 1 million piece or a 1 million's worth of platinum.
No, I think he means 1 million platinum pieces.
Okay, so is that 1 million? Okay, so 1 million platinum pieces. And 50 gallons of a god's blood. Okay, interesting. A million.
1 million platinum pieces. And remember, that's like, as far as I know, platinum is worth either 10 gold or 100 gold. One of the two.
It's 100, because they're all 100 of each other. So 100 copper to a silver. Or no, is it? No, it's 10. Right,
it's 100 copper to a gold, and then 10.
So it's 10. No, it's 10 each. So yeah, 10 copper to a silver, 10 silver to a gold, 10 gold to a platinum. So yeah, so it's like
that's a lot of gold.
That's 10 million. Oh yeah, 10 million gold. 10 million gold per spell, which I don't know. Yeah, I don't know any other level 9 spell that costs that much. I think the average is like a couple thousand. I think, or like the top might be like a couple thousand, maybe 10,000. So okay, so that's
and 50 gallons of a god's blood.
So of any just a god's blood.
God. Like now I don't know like what level of gods, if it's like a demigod or whatever, but listen, if you're a demigod and you got 50 gallons of blood to give, like I mean, listen, what? It's fine.
Yeah, those feel, I mean, I get the idea to make it like to set it apart, but I mean, I know it's custom. I know it's custom, and maybe it's more of a representation of
what this specific spell does.
This is, or it could be a representation of what it does. It could be a representation of just how the mechanics work in this setting. And again, this isn't meant to be a spell that you would find on a scroll. You know, nobody would publish this and be like, this is what it's. I mean, knowing that what we know from Cosmic's lore and knowing what we know about that setting, this probably has a very specific use and a very specific need. But at the same time, I will be honest, it feels very unnecessarily like overbalanced. Like this feels unnecessary. Like,
it feels like there's too much.
It's like, I understand that it's supposed to feel fantastical. It's supposed to feel that level, and it's supposed to feel unobtainable by even the players. Like I get that differentiation, but the God's blood, a pint of God's blood could be enough to separate the players, right? Like that could be enough to just be like, you can't do that. You guys can't get blood, right? Right. To do the 1 million platinum, just even to me, like if I'm thinking about it as a player, to hear that, it's almost like it goes from the point of fantastical and like, holy shit, to, oh, like it's just too far beyond the realm of like, why does that even matter? Especially from a DM point of view, why make it that expensive? If you're going to lock it from your players anyway, I don't know. Maybe I don't understand enough about the lore. Like maybe I don't understand enough about like where it's used and how it's used. But to me, it just feels unnecessary. It feels like you could accomplish the same thing with a specific gem that doesn't exist, anywhere, or just the God's blood and, 1,000 platinum. Like even like ditch the platinum and do something worth platinum, right? Like, right. I would be.
I do think that would be an interesting idea, like something like worth a stupid amount of money.
Like those are usually great, right? Yeah. Like like an artifact. And God's blood, like those are things that could be so unobtainable for the average player that I just feel like for me, when I would balance something, this just feels like absurd.
When I look at other spell components, generally speaking, the spell components actually tell a little bit of a story of what the spell is actually doing. right? If you think about it, like there's some spells that require holy water. Those are always like cleric spells, like spells that they have to use with having some relationship to their god or whatever. Yeah. Exactly. And so a lot of the times, like what we're seeing in the spell components have something. Now, I've actually seen it like one of the spell components for, I think it's interplanar travel or something like that, is like a tuning fork from a certain dimension or something like that. But you use that in the actual casting of the spell. Like that's how the spell gets cast, is with that piece. And so a lot of the times I've even seen where you like melt down the gold, or you use the gold like in whatever the actual process of the spell is. Right. So I don't know if that's something that
like we might it or give it up. And that's what I'm saying. We may not know enough about the lore. It's just it almost feels like, I understand making it unobtainable, but I would like to see the lore behind it before we like really make a decision. It just feels like
interesting,
almost too much. Like I would have been happy with just the God's blood, like, and not even 50 gallons, like 50, like, I get it. It's just I would have been happy with just a pint of God's blood and some fantastic artifact that you can't get anywhere, right?
Right.
Like that would have been good for me, but that's just as a player point of view, right? Like for me, if it's just so far, and this is again not a comment on how you would build settings, but as a player for myself, if it is meant to be unobtainable, I would prefer it to be more mysticism based, like. There's something out there. Like I would prefer it to remain a mystery. Just there's something that I'm not allowed to have, right? Like when you say we have gods, and what kind of power is that? Well, it's God power. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the mysticism that there's godlike power. I'm okay with you saying that a god presents itself, does something in front of me when I ask, well, what spell did he cast or what did he do? Go, it's God power. And then that's it. That's all I get. I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? Like I'm personally okay with that. But when I'm giving something that's arbitrarily unobtainable, like, it's like, oh yeah, here's this fantastic thing and you get me hyped, and then like, and again, not saying what Cosmic's doing is not this, but I've had this happen where it's like they'll get you hyped on something and like it seems like it's obtainable, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, and it's in a place that doesn't exist anymore, it was destroyed. And it's like, why the buildup? Why the entire buildup of acting like this could change our campaign? And you're like, oh yeah, it doesn't even exist anymore. And it's like, why do you even tell us? I don't care if you want. Again, it's that whole thing of like, you present me an Occam's razor and then be like, oh, that was just a decoy. But that's not how Occam's razor works. You can't put something in there and then just be like, by the way, it was never supposed to be used. I'm not saying that just what you're doing, Cosmic. Sorry, I am not responding to you. That happened to me a while back, and it just still stings to this day, because literally like half the campaign we were made to believe, because it was constantly being mentioned, and they were just mentioning it just because they made it in a different game, so they just wanted the lore because they thought it was cool. But it literally was constantly being made to be like this was going to be the end game. And then halfway through, when we were finally just like at it, we were like, bro, we have literally asked everybody. We've done everything we can. We've made every roll.
You guys were like investigating. How do you not catch on that these people
he's just
want
like,
this?
Oh yeah, he's just like, no, it's destroyed. It's like it's long gone. It was in a place that like doesn't exist. And I'm like, we were literally just like, I think we like ended the game like 2 or 3 game sessions later, because it was just like you've literally wasted like 7 gaming sessions. Making us believe.
At that point, just create it. At that point, just build it. Just put it in, man. Like,
no,
come on.
Was like I said, like it was such a tough. So again, so as a player, when something feels so unobtainable that it's like blatant, like you aren't supposed to touch this, I will lose interest. I will just flat out be like, oh, okay, I'll never think about that again. I'll forget about it. Don't you, all your work that you put in. And it's not to say that, again, I don't do that like intentionally to like be against the DM. But again, when they're like, yeah, this is impossible, it's keep it mysticism. I'd rather keep it a mystery, but if you flat out give me something and then say you'll never touch it, I'll forget about it. Why do I care? Unless it applies to my game, right? Unless that's the weapon that the BBEG will use against me, then
I need to know about it so that I can defend against it or something like that.
But if I see a god with an awesome weapon and you describe all of the stats on that weapon and be like, oh yeah, but I would never let a player use it, I will immediately forget about that god weapon. Why? Because I will never touch it. So why would I, you know what I mean? It's like wasted space in my head. So that's my knee-jerk reaction of where that comes from. Not saying, again, Cosmic, that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that why I say this feels arbitrarily out of reach is, as a player, I would, if I were told that, if I were to come into this game and be presented this, I'd immediately forget about it. Because it's just one of those, okay, it doesn't apply to me. And that, I don't think, is what Cosmic's trying to do. I think he wants the mysticism. I think he wants the
interesting.
I think he wants the player's reaction.
Yeah.
But I think that just saying, oh, this requires God's blood, This requires the blood of a god. Just saying that gives me enough mysticism to go, I don't even understand. Because I know how you could get God's blood in my realm, but I have no idea how you would even go about it, because maybe gods don't bleed. Maybe this is maybe you have to have a certain kind of container. Maybe you have a certain kind of weapon.
We know a little bit about Cosmic's world, and the one dragon.
Yeah, and that's trapped. And
right?
That's where my mind's going, is I'm assuming it's from the goddess, like bleeding the goddess dry. But that's my thing, right? That is not something the players would actively interact with. So that's where I would be, right? I would much rather have the mysticism of being like, wow, it must take someone really powerful, than to be given a laundry list of, okay, never mind.
Right.
Just me, though. And I wanted to explain why I'm just kind of going off on this feels a little bit too much. So that's where that one's coming from. But I do have a bunch of stuff in chat that I haven't been ignoring. Okay, so from Cosmic originally, he did want to know what you thought of the spell's name. Cruxford's Crafty Cheat.
I think it's a very clever name. I really, I like the what do they call that when everything it sounds good together with the C's, all of them. I don't know. There's a special name in language for names that are like that, like the Lusty Lagoon or
right. All the letters are the same.
Whatever
right? So
it's called.
Yeah, you like
it feels good.
The CCC,
right?
Like Cruxford Crafty Cheat.
Yeah, it just feels.
Flows.
Even though the cheat does, it's not the that the Cruxford Crafty was, and it
does. It's like ping pong.
Yeah,
Crafty Cheat. It does flow into that.
It works. I'm here for it.
I do like that, and I think that for me, that name does give me some insights of okay, BBEG. This is the ace up his sleeve. That immediately is what it tells me.
Especially because you trying to cheat, you trying to mess. All right, mess with me, bro. Mess with me.
And then he said he couldn't think of more accurate name for this spell, so he simply named it after the BBG himself. Which again, I think, if you look at Tasha's Cauldron and Xanther's Guide, there are so many spells that are named after their people. Even old school. If you go back to AD&D in 2nd edition,
what's one of my favorites?
So many of the higher level spells.
Lehman's Tiny Hut. I freaking love that
Lehman's
one.
Lehman's huge. Lehman is one of the OG wizards who has we should have talked about that before stream. But again, one of those examples, if you look at the lore, Lehman's been around forever. He is based in old lore. So his spells are an example of ones that by the book have just been kind of around. Right. That's where I base my arguments on. Just as an example, you wanted an example.
That's fair.
You helped me find one. Not saying that proves my point.
No.
I feel you wanted one, and that was a great example.
Very much so.
Of just because of how we talked about how does the book represent it throughout the editions. Certain mages have existed. And those and their magic has persisted. So that would be a good example that I couldn't think of before. But yeah, no, name is really awesome. I like the name. I like that it's named after the person. I actually prefer that when you want it to stand out, because naming things cool names is one thing, but cool names get lost in the crowd. You go on D&D Beyond. I mean, how many cool things have we reviewed that have cool names, right? Anime Swordsman, right? But that doesn't you're not going to remember who made Anime Swordsman. You're going to kind of get an idea of what it was, right? Mm-hmm. But naming it after a prominent NPC, right? It puts it at a place and time, and it gives it weight.
And it's super cool if the players actually know that NPC or that, and they fought
it's
him.
It's not just a name that you just give.
I fought against that Crafty Cheat before,
or you give him one of those BBGs where they fight multiple times, and it's not until the third time you get his name.
Right.
And then you're you have this buildup, and then finally you get to see oh yeah, no, I love that. I think that is actually a fantastic direction to go. I think it gives it weight, just like Kintsugi's Resolve. Yeah. It gives it weight when you give it more than just existence. You gave it existence, but you also gave it history. With a name comes history, and I think that gives it more validity, and I think people take it more seriously. So I don't think you did a bad thing there, Cosmic. So he does say that as a wind-up, when he casts this spell, he'll verbally say, you have some powerful gear. Shame if something were to happen to it.
Well, all right.
That's already telling us a little bit. That's a little bit of an insight.
That's unfortunate.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I'm curious what you think about this one. The BBG can cast this spell 3 times. Once innately, and twice via spell scrolls. So not only has, again, he created this scroll, his spell, he's tested it enough to be able to transcribe it, have it reproducible. So he has 2 scrolls that he's created, and he can cast it innately, which means
now
he's put at least 3 million most recently to this, and 150 gallons of blood. Most recently to at least the 3 that he has.
So that's
prepped.
my question. Like, is the components like cast into the scroll?
Usually, yes. Usually, like a lot of the times, if you have like a prepared scroll, it's usually because like the idea is that
everything
all of
you
the
need to cast it is.
Yeah, a lot of the times you'll look in the book, like the DMG, it'll talk about like it's the difference between like a scroll and a spell scroll. Of the times is because like the ink, it'll be like magic ink. So it's like that's why some scrolls you can read off of, and then other scrolls you can cast from, and like consumes the scroll versus like yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways that D&D has tried to explain scroll work, and it's all
Scroll
convoluted.
yeah.
But I do like I like the idea of it being on a scroll, but I'm just like 3 of these.
That's gonna be scary. That's gonna be very scary.
This does bring up something. Actually,
I'm very curious what it does, especially to know how bad it would be to happen 3 times.
So this actually brings up a good side tangent, and I know Cosmic doesn't typically like these, but this brings up actually a really good point that we haven't talked about yet, even before stream, is the complete lack, in my opinion, of a justifiable casting difference between known spells and spells off scrolls. In the sense that if you've prepared a spell, if you are casting it from your head or your book or from a sorcerer, if you're casting it from some way that is familiar to you, that's one thing. But to say in the middle of battle, you're going to put you're going to do whatever, you're going to pull up this thing and you're going to start reading off of it and be like, you got to hold this piece and you got to say these words and don't forget. Like a scroll is a little bit different of a medium, right? You're not doing the same things. You're not doing the hand movements. You may not have to have the material. You're kind of reading off the scroll. But I'm interested in the fact that they've never made it different. Right? You cast off a scroll, you reading off a scroll and casting magic is the same as me casting magic that I've prepared and known for years.
When you say the same, you talking about like action time?
It takes you just as long to cast that unfamiliar spell as it does me, the spell I've been casting for 10 years. It is a little strange. Not saying it's bad. It's just, it's one of the areas where they've never even tried.
I do think
it's never been something tempting.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times they do that stuff like that because imagine you find a scroll in a dungeon. You've never seen that spell before in your entire life, right? And so you either can't use it until you learn that spell, or you somehow just have the ability to magically cast a spell you never knew before. And so,
and usually it's because they're written in they're written in a language that you can read, and like I understand there's ways you can go about it. I wouldn't even be upset with like a small mechanic of just like you have to research or you have to review the scroll for 1 hour before you can cast it at time. Otherwise, casting time's doubled. I would be fine with that, right? Just, it's a quick, easy thing. I just spend an hour. I read it. Okay, I can cast it at time. Mm-hmm. But that could be clutch, right? You're in the middle of a fight. The BBEG drops his scroll bag. You grab a scroll. You don't get a cast at that time. You don't have an hour. I just think something small like that.
Interesting.
It's not something I think is game breaking. I'm not saying that D&D has been wrong this whole time, but it is something that I found interesting that in all of the research I've done in all of these sessions, they've never changed that. Casting from a scroll and casting innately, it's all based on the spell's cast time. It doesn't matter the medium. And I've always...
Interesting.
It's very strange. You would think, logically, one would take longer than the other. And I would think that shouldn't be a problem. If you could, again, just take an hour, review it so you're kind of ready for the right words, I think that would be fine. I think that'd be just a totally fine lore-based way to allow that. But just that I can pick up a scroll and cast it at the same speed is, especially with a scroll, one I've never seen before, that's not one I've cast recently, it just feels a little weird. Because, it's almost like if you apply lore to it, it's almost like it takes away, you're a wizard. You've spent years researching and practicing, and I can just pick up any scroll and go, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, I can read. You spent years crafting and researching and learning, and I'm just like, I can read. So it's that thing of like, it almost in game, it almost, if you were to look at it from the character's point of view, it takes away from all of the work that one mage could do.
The only consolation I would say is you gotta either spend money or find those, and it's a finite resource. Whereas I'm gonna be good every single day. Like that's the only solace I'm gonna have. Like you can ha me all day long, but at the end of the day,
is absolutely
you out of luck.
That is 100% true though. The simple fact of being able to cast it once versus knowing the spell is a huge difference.
But yeah, I definitely just
a small little thing I've always noticed that it's just been kind of like a No,
right?
Again, it's never been something I've been worth changing. I've never even thought about it in High Point, like actively, like seriously thought about changing the mechanic.
Right.
It's just always kind of been like, you think maybe it should take
maybe.
But yeah, so 3. So what do you think about that? Him having 3. We'll have to know what it does.
In order for me to give a clear answer to that, I'm gonna need to know a little bit more about what it does, because
I am hesitant.
If it's
like any spell that you have on reserve like that, I'm hesitant, right? Like you can even say it's Fireball. Like I have it memorized twice and I have 3 scrolls. Just doing that in general is always like okay, let's see where you're going with this, right? Like let's. But then again, players do that shit all the time,
right?
You know, so yeah, I agree. I think it's just more of a let's see what it does and see how bad the player should be worried about 3 instances of it.
Exactly.
Mind's Eye, I did see you come in here, and I am so sorry. We were in the middle of something, and I kept getting distracted. I am so sorry I didn't say hi. What is up, Mind's Eye? Thank you so much for showing up. And then when we were talking, Cosmic did say that the chains on that siphon from the goddess, that's how he is getting the blood. So he is getting the blood from them. Let's see. So how do you get 50 gallons? Oh yeah. So Mind's Eye is asking how do you get 50 gallons of blood from a god. And then, good point. Yeah, do all gods have the same blood? Does it have the same reaction? Like, so can you get any god's blood?
Interesting.
I'm kind of thinking that question, in my opinion, I'm assuming it's more based on Cosmic's lore. So it's written as God's blood, but it's more probably specific to he only has access to one god.
This is what he was doing, and this is what he used.
That god's blood, probably the goddesses. And then you drain very small portions of blood from time to time. Then it takes 5+ years to blood drawing to get 50. That would be interesting. Yeah, how often can you draw blood from the god? How
it's
often
like you're milking them.
Yeah, like how often does it replenish instantaneously because it's a god, or do you need to take time for that? That's interesting. Okay, so yeah, Cosmic's answering all of those questions, and I think they got maybe a little bit ahead of what we were talking about. So let's see. Yes, Cosmic, you definitely have a unique way of thinking. Mind's Eye, I hate you. God damn it.
What?
Did you know that all the seas in Pacific Ocean are pronounced differently? What? Sound it out.
Pacific Ocean?
Motherfucker, I hate you. I'm never going to stop thinking about I'm never going to think of it. Like, I'm never going to not see that. There's 3 different ways to pronounce a C.
That's fair. That's really rude.
I didn't need that earworm, damn it. God damn it.
At the end of this stream, we're just going to be like Pacific Ocean.
Mordecai. Oh yeah. Mordenkainen.
Mordenkainen's what is it? Tomophos or
he has a lot. Mind's Eye would just listen up. It was Tasha, Leomund, Mordekainen. There's a lot of others, but those were some of like the
really
main,
fat. Because Tasha's hideous laughter, and I know what's his name's got one, but I'm not sure what.
Cosmo says, I could imagine anime swordsmen having a mid-level feat called plot armor, which gives them advantage on the bonus hits. Don't they actually have plot armor? Wasn't that
actually,
like a 7th or
you know what's cool?
Level?
Since I'm
100% sure
everything, I can just
anime
go
swordsman does
take
have
a gander real quick.
I'm 100% certain anime swordsman has plot armor.
They have plot armor.
No, I'm 100% sure that was one of the feats that they get.
Plot armor, 10th level. When rolling a death saving throw, you suffer one failing. You only suffer 1 failure when you roll a natural 1. That's their version of plot armor.
Yeah, so basically you just can't like insta die.
Yes,
like you'll always get your saves. That's
and you crit on a 19 or a 20.
Okay,
you crit get up on a 19 or 20.
There's your plot armor.
That's there. Yes, but I do like that. I do like how quickly that was defined. So
Cosmo says the point is that it's meant to help give the players. Oh no, he was talking about. The scales at a higher chance to activate if they haven't by the time. Oh, gotcha. Okay, so remember how at this point, by fighting the BBEG, they should have, technically, at this point, if we understand his lore, if they're at the fight with the BBEG while he has these spells, they've already freed the goddess.
And she's gone. She fell,
and then she
gone.
gave them the scales, right?
Yes.
So his idea is his reasoning by why he's given 3 is this is going to give multiple opportunities, if it hasn't already happened, to activate those shield gifts.
Interesting.
So basically, if they free the goddess, get the scale gifts, remember, they don't activate until they die.
Right.
Because it has to save them. So if they get to the BBEG fight and they haven't activated all of them or any of them, he's planning this to kind of be that pushing point to make sure they all get theirs for the final fight.
So this might like put them on the brink of death.
This is
multiple times.
He's
Interesting.
saying that he's trying to make sure that by this fight, all of them are going to get all of their gear. He doesn't like. It's almost as if like this fight needs that gear, so he's guaranteeing that they'll activate it.
Okay. Bet.
He says it does massive damage. So like this spell is designed to basically, if you haven't gotten your specialties yet, you're gonna fucking get them in this fight. Remember, it does basically give them like a second win. It does res them back.
Yes.
When it brings back. So the whole point is like, if you haven't activated it yet, he has. So 3 doesn't necessarily sound that bad, unless they have all been activated. But with the mindset that they probably haven't been activated because they probably haven't died yet. I mean, after you finish the goddess, they only have a couple items to go left. So, they're probably going to have a good opportunity here. So, I understand that. I understand that makes me feel better about having 3. It also means that he's been stocking these up for a while because he's already freed the goddess, which means these have already been...
He's already drained his 150 gallons.
Yeah, but this was the last. These are the last 3. Well, you would maybe assume these could be the last 3. Because if you defeat him, unless you find him elsewhere, right? And then
that's fair. Unless he's got
that would be really interesting if there's like a Beyond game with these characters, and like you could walk away with just one of these scrolls, and you're basically just like, it's like a Doomsday Scroll. You just get one.
Oh,
like he had one in reserve in his chest, and you found it, and you're just like, okay, this is the Doomsday Scroll. No one ever cast this, right?
Right.
Oh man, that becomes like, and then like the heroes decide, like you as a party, because you can't like destroy it for whatever reason, like it won't light on fire. So you guys decide to go hide it. You're like, this scroll is too dangerous. So at the end of the game, the party decides to go hide it, and you let the party decide how to hide it. They elaborately go places,
put it in another dimension,
and then when that's all done, that's your next campaign. The next party that starts up...
Are they looking for it?
Yeah. Either they're looking for it, or they're trying to stop somebody who's about to find it.
Who's looking for it?
And it's like 100 years in the future. Like the whole point is like, you could literally...
That's kind of dope. I like that.
That would be...
I like that. I like that a lot.
I like that idea. Let's see. So that was the point. Let's see. So... doesn't rhyme with lead. Doesn't rhyme with lead. Oh yeah, I'd have to read that slowly. Mine's I posted a word game or a word thing.
Oh my goodness!
You have to read it properly, so you have to actually like think about it for a second.
Hold on. Was this after XD?
Yeah. So it's lead and read rhyme. Lead and rhyme also rhyme.
But read doesn't rhyme.
Yeah, I can't read that enough. I can't read that slow enough right now. And then Cosmic says the activated item has a divine rarity, which are immune to the spell's effects. Which 1, divine isn't a canon rarity, and 2, they're literally parts of the goddess herself. Okay. So when this activates, the reason why it's not going to affect the BBEG is because he has basically parts of the divine on him, protecting him from it.
Interesting.
That's what I understand from what Cosmic's saying.
It sounds like he's saying that the items that are going to activate on the players are going to be...
Oh, those are
going to be divine items.
Right. Okay, so he's talking about their scales.
Yeah, the scales they have are from the goddess, so they're divine items.
If this were to kill them, it won't deactivate theirs because they are parts of the goddess. Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay. Cool.
I thought he was talking about the BBEG wasn't being affected because his stuff was made by the goddess. So I'm like, okay, that totally makes sense. But no, the scales is what
that might also track.
Okay, excellent. So with the components, casting action is a bonus action. Again, we'll have to see what it does. I understand the premise now. It's meant to help activate the players a little bit more. But even then, now I'm still wanting it now to feel more like an action. Because again, it's like doing that. I mean, the point is to kill them, right? The point is to kind of reactivate their abilities. But 3 times is just...
I'm curious... just so for me, when I think of something as a bonus action, I feel like it should be a bonus action kind of for a reason. Like there's a certain spell where you can create a flaming sword in your hand, right? And you can do that as a bonus action, so you can then attack with the flaming sword. I kind of get that. Like you want to maximize what you're able to do with this, right? But with other things, sometimes they just make it a bonus action just cause. Like I feel like if I want this to be a bonus action, there should be something I can do with my action to complement this on this turn.
That's a great way to put that. Yeah, because
you know what I'm saying?
This point, it's like if this is really just meant to flat out kill them, unless there's an action that you're holding off to finish the deal, but that's also what this is meant for, right? This is kind of meant to push them into that like stage. So
it's almost like you're kicking a puppy while he's down or something.
Yeah, so it's like this is either supposed to be the complement, or it's not doing enough damage and you need a complement, which doesn't sound like it has one. So yeah, I would say that that's a good example of when a bonus action spell would make really good balancing sense. And see, yeah, that's perfect. I could much more justify a higher level bonus action spell when you put it through the prism of it's a complementary spell, not a primary spell. And I think that's where our biggest argument differed earlier is... When I look at 9th level spells, I'm typically thinking of just like the grandiose, this is the spell, power word kill. It is doing what you need it to do.
Yeah.
Even that spell that we looked at, the other one that was in Tasha's Cauldron, right?
The
Disaster. That's not a complementary spell.
Exactly.
It's a complementary thing, but it's just there to do what it does, and it doesn't feel like it should be a complementary thing to an additional attack or an additional spell or whatever. So. I like that delineation because at that point, it's not like what we talked about before. It's not so much about the power you're throwing around, but the implementation. A 9th level spell doesn't necessarily specifically have to hold a certain level of power or complexity. It's one or the other or both for whatever it's being used for.
Exactly.
And maybe that's where...
And that's kind of what my mindset was trying to gear towards is like, I understand why you might want to limit this aspect of it, but... I can see how it could be used in a way.
There are approaches to it.
Yeah.
I don't think what we saw in Tasha's was a good example of that.
Exactly.
That was definitely not a good
that.
bonus one. This one, again, until we see what it does, I'm kind of leading with you. Again, the bonus action just feels like what's supposed to go with it. And if it's not supposed to go with anything, why not make it an action?
Fair.
Especially if doing it as a bonus action, like you mentioned, doesn't prevent a counterspell. Like, if that were the difference, right? Like, if you could counterspell an action spell, but can't counterspell a bonus action or lower, which I think would be a really interesting alternative rule option, right? Because then you're talking about literally you have to catch them in the act. You have to also cast your spell before their spell ends. Like, it could be a unique mechanic for, like, higher level gaming. Like, if you wanted to do an advanced level gaming. I wouldn't consider that a house rule for most gamers, but that would be an interesting advanced level game where actions or higher spells can be interrupted. Lessers can't.
Okay.
Unique. But yeah, unless there's some sort of in-game reason why a bonus spell or bonus action realistically is more advantageous in battle, like if there's another action that's needed, it does kind of feel like it's unnecessary again. It feels like this would be better off just as a straight action. But we do have a duration of instantaneous. It's interesting. You don't usually see duration as instantaneous.
I would if you check your list. I think there's quite a few of those.
Is there instantaneous duration? Maybe I'm just confused.
So the duration being instantaneous just means like the effect happens. Yeah. Like imagine Fireball. Fireball doesn't have a duration. The duration of Fireball is instantaneous. Like the duration of the Blink spell lasts for a minute with concentration.
I think a lot of the times, like I think sometimes in the books they'll just not include it if it's supposed to be just supposed to just happen. Like Fireball, I don't think has a duration in the book, so my mind doesn't immediately go to instantaneous.
I think there's a lot of the older versions especially did that. Like, 'cause I've noticed when I'm looking up spells, like they don't always
cost money. or something. You know
I
what
mean,
I mean?
fair.
Like, it's
very,
probably,
very
I'm
fair.
assuming that's what it was, but no. That's why I'm just like, instantaneous. It's like, no, there's plenty of instantaneous durations. It's just, it's not typically the go-to, like.
It's what you think about.
Yeah, it's usually just like a duration. It's like there is a duration or there's not. So,
exactly.
Okay, so it's basically casting bonus action. It's just going to happen. All right, so let's get down into this now that we've dissected the aspect of casting it. Let's actually figure out what it does now. I'm sure Cosmic's just fuming at this point.
Itching.
All right, so description. You speak one of the 5 command words below. Okay, so we're not even getting a singular spell either. We're getting a multifaceted spell here. Interesting. So one of 5 command words below. The spoken word. More so chuckling at your commentary. You speak one of 5 magic commands below. The spoken word causes all magic items of the declared rarity within range to shudder and explode violently. So essentially, this is like casting Mass Shatter on all
specifically magic items.
So Mass Shatter on all magic items.
Okay.
Of the rarity spoken. So the command words are rarity.
Okay.
So you speak a command word of a type of rarity, and all of those rarities within the range explode.
Okay.
Now, what's really interesting is, does 5th edition specifically cover magical explosions? Magical item explosions?
No.
2nd edition used to.
Did they?
Yeah. There used to be rules, and I think even, I don't know if 3.5 had them, but there used to be rules that governed when a magical item explodes.
Interesting.
There used to be...
Were there like divine things that happened, or like really like...
Just damage. The whole point was like if you had like, if you broke a magical item, like...
The magic in it would erupt out of it.
The whole point was it was basic, and then the higher magical items would basically be like very small level nukes, and then other ones would be like fireball level. So I don't think 5th edition has canon magic. I don't think I've had that for a long time, but I do miss those rule sets because magic item explosions used to be a fucking bitch.
Maybe we can morph this spell into just a straight up rule set. That's kind of legit.
But I do like that. I like the idea that they absolutely explode. Okay, so its pieces are flung out in a 3x3 squares centered on the creature holding it. Like sharp grain. Okay, so whatever it is that's exploding, it's going to explode in a 3x3.
Okay.
Centered on, the item, the player, whatever. That's interesting because it's all magical items, so it's not even worn magical items. It's just everywhere, anything just sitting there is just going to explode. For each item destroyed, or for each destroyed item being held, worn, or carried, the creature must take a DC 25 dexterity saving throw. The creature takes force damage according to the table below on a failed save, half as much on a successful. So how?
It's standard dexterity. I mean, how is a great question.
Like Cosmic, honestly, I would just get rid of this. There's no point. Like, if the whole point is to kill him, I don't see what's the purpose of a dexterity saving throw. And if I'm wearing magical armor or armor of a certain rarity, if I'm holding my sword, there's no ducking and weaving. Like, it's the same argument we talk about of how you're going to dodge out of the way of fireball. Like, in the reality of this,
yeah,
no DC check, like a constitution check to see if I don't pass out maybe from the bludgeoning and the force damage and all of the piercing damage. But to be completely honest, like, these are things I'm wearing. These are things on me and I'm holding.
You know what I would say?
And I don't even know what's about to explode. You know what I mean? They just do.
I would say this, and this is only being extra generous. It would be the second time it happens to them, they get a saving throw, and that's just to see
because
if they can get
they
can get anything off of them in time.
Is, like, you're no way. There's no way you're taking armor off. If your armor explodes, there's no dexterity. Like, I can understand Constitution because it's concussive and it's piercing. So you could be like, hey, you
can brace yourself or something. Yeah, I don't know.
But to be honest, I'm not a fan of. Okay, I should say, at least with this one, if you're going to make some sort of, like, save, I'm okay with that. I wouldn't go the same route as the half damage that the typical spell does. For me, I'm not a fan of that. I am not really a fan of the default for save throws is half damage, especially on everything. It's just like their default of, oh, you saved, oh, you half damage. It's like, a lot of times, like, fireball makes sense. You dive out of the way, you're still going to get scorched, but you didn't get the explosion. I get half damage. But there are things that just, like, if you miss, you miss. Or if you get hit, you get hit. There's some things that they apply half damage that doesn't really make sense.
This is just real quick, because we were talking about fireball earlier, specifically. Like, imagine that you can make a dexterity saving throw for fireball if you dive out of the way and go prone.
Oh, and then literally it's just over you. You kind of just get fit.
That's the only time you can make. Otherwise, you don't move and you take full damage.
Or you do move and you can take partial damage because you moved away from the main thing. But if you don't hit the ground, like, so it's like quarter. So if you choose to go prone, you can take quarter damage. If you choose to move away, it's half.
See, I like that.
If you take all, like, but again, like the half damage in this particular case, and I'm mainly just saying this even from a player point of view, it just doesn't feel like I would be able to save out of this as a player, and this doesn't feel right to say. Like, it's if I'm gonna save from it, I would rather it make more sense. And if it's gonna just destroy all of that, like, I don't know, it's kind of weird to come out of that, right? Like, to come out of that kind of unscathed, or at least, with half damage. I would say that maybe if you're holding the item, you can make a dex save, but if it's armor, I would say there's no dex save. At least make it more palatable in that particular case, because it would make more sense what they're targeting. And I know that this is mainly for you, Cosmic, and it's not like for other DMs, but if we were to apply this from, like a general standpoint, it would put it on you, Cosmic, or the DM to be more mindful which command word to use. Because if armor isn't savable, but weapons are, the DM in that case would choose at what severity do they want this to hurt. Maybe the first one's only weapons because they can save off of them. But maybe the scale up is like, oh, you saved your weapons. That's cute. How fast can you take that armor off? And now it's clicking in their heads. Oh shit, our armor. So imagine that you just explode their weapons. They all dex save because they drop them. And then the next thing you basically tell them is how, what about your armor? Like, having them know that at any point you can cast that spell on their armor is now, like that's just upped the level of tenseness, right?
And you can take your armor off now if you want to.
Exactly, right? You could start taking it off now and not have it explode on your body.
That's why it pays to be a monk or barbarian.
Even so. So I would say that, yeah, if it was tweaked slightly to where if you could justifiably get away from the item like a weapon, I would be okay with the save. But I would like to see some sort of tilt towards no save, because I think it puts more decision on the DM and more reality on the player.
There's no language in there that says it wouldn't affect the BBEG, correct?
So far, no. It has not said anything that technically the BBEG would not be affected. But if they're not wearing any kind of rarity.
Exactly. So either they're wearing divine rarity, which is described as immune, or
artifacts, divine, and wondrous items are all immune. So he could literally, and if he can create this spell, he could literally have gone out of his way to collect those items.
Can you clarify what you mean when you say wondrous item? Because there are some like common items that are technically considered wondrous item. I've really always wondered what that
I don't
specific
think wondrous item is actually
mean.
like a rarity category. I think. Well, because can you? I don't think I've ever seen a common wondrous item. I think I've seen a rare, but I don't know if I've seen legendary wondrous items. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I've only ever seen rare
for wondrous.
A wondrous item. Is it rare that I've seen?
I mean, there's definitely rare ones, but there's also common ones and uncommon ones.
Really?
Yeah. So let me look.
Nothing comes off the top of my head.
I can't think of it. Let me just look. So we are going to type is going to be wondrous item, rarity is going to be common, and that's all I care about. Look up. You can look up.
He says he's not overly familiar with the difference of wondrous items and artifacts, so I think it was just more of the idea of anything beyond legendary.
Got you.
So I think that makes sense. I think it was
artifacts,
just more of a safety
artifacts
call.
And
it doesn't sound like he was like having that specifically, like he had wondrous items in mind. I think it was just the mindset. Anything beyond legendary or what you could consider mortal like the mortal standard, would be immune to this. He does want to know he had a question for you. Do you know any teleportation spells that are reaction based?
I cannot think of any. The only teleportation spells that I really know of is there's Thunderstep, there's Misty Step, which is a bonus action.
I thought Misty Step could be used as a reaction though.
No, not that I know of.
I swear there is. No, wait. Is it the?
There are some class abilities.
The Echo Knight has a reaction.
There are class abilities that can do that, but no spells that I can think of.
Yeah, I don't know any there's very few reaction spells in general.
There are very few. Like there's Absorb Elements, there's Shield, there's a couple others in there that kind of but nothing really significant. I do like the effect that you can... if you take Warcaster, you can use any spell of touch as a reaction when you are doing an attack of opportunity.
Wait a second. Am I thinking correctly?
Oh, Blink is a concentration spell.
Is it?
Yes, it lasts for a minute. That's one of my favorite spells, and you disappear into another dimension.
I could have sworn that it is an action. I could have sworn that could also be taken as a reaction. Man,
there's Tree Stride, which is a whole thing. You got Teleportation Circle, and then just straight up teleport, and those are super higher level.
Yeah, Dimension Door.
Yeah, those are actions.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'd have to do some more research on that. Teleportation spells with the reaction that are reaction based would be
I would say yes, Cosmic, to that last question. I believe that you can ready an action, and when you ready an action, you end up using both your action and your reaction to do that thing. But I will say that if you don't set off your teleportation, that whenever you ready something, you lose that spell slot. But I would say you could basically use that readied spell as a reaction to do something.
Yeah, even looking at a lot of the community out there, there are no official react to teleport. But it's all about either having the feats that allow you to quickly cast spells, readying spells, or having specific feats that do it. But yeah, there are no absolute this spell does that, which I think is actually kind of unfortunate. Like, I would love to have a blink spell, like a lower level blink spell that's like you have like a 50% chance if you get hit to appear in a square adjacent to the attacker. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Just,
I would
you cast that, and then you're just like you haven't. You can't go very far. You can't do anything, but maybe it just saves you from a hit or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, or even have like a class. Like, I mean, but then we're talking about class features or race features.
I would even like it if when you teleport, you can basically make an attack of opportunity, or like it teleports you, and then you can make like a quick counter attack, like a higher level spell or something like that could do that. But.
Something like that, yeah. I would love something like that would be kind of interesting. Okay, so basically anything over legendary is immune to this spell, which again, if he's been crafting the spell for a long time, he'd be smart enough to have covered himself in divine and artifact level items. Still, again, I think that the save against damage for the player's side, I think that could be reworked a little bit. Mainly just to make sure that it does what it's intended to do, but also give more control to the players and the DM about when and what it's being targeted for.
You know what would be so dirty? So freaking dirty. This dude had all this prepared. So he gets a bunch of random common items and and he just places them around where they're going to have the fight. And it's just like, hey, bro, no matter where you're at, hey, you're not wearing any common items? That's all right. There's 4 of them at your feet. Go boom. Like, it's just all bad. Like,
or, you do things where it's like you walk in and like you just do something mundane where it's like, oh, yeah, you walk in and then you explain something that's normal, but then you explain something that's like slightly out of place. Like, but you do notice that from the ceiling, there seem to be hastily hung lanterns of all various types, various designs, various, eloquency, and various different flame colors. And that's all you say. And it's like, oh, that sounds cool. And then halfway through the fight, he's just like, common. And then just parts of the ceiling just start exploding. And then it's like, oh, Yeah, those are all items too. And then you're just like, okay, rare. And then it's like it can cause collapses. It can cause rough terrain. Like there's so many things that you could do with that. It's almost like a legendary action at that point.
So lightweight, like a lair action almost.
Yeah, because you would basically be changing literally the landscape of the fight.
Last night,
basically magical landmines.
Last night, Vanessa and I, we ended up watching what was it? The newest Matrix movie, and there's a scene in there where they're like running away from all the like bad guys or wherever, where they like activate a lot of these basically weird agents, and they end up doing dive bombs out of like the buildings, and they're just basically like hitting the ground like mortars and like causing like huge like destruction. And it feels like when you cast this spell, like stuff's just gonna like start breaking off, and stuff's just gonna start falling and crashing everywhere, and it's just gonna be this huge chaos of destruction. It's
So yeah, so Cosmic was saying like he was thinking that if someone can teleport as a reaction, he could justify that they would not be at the location of the spell at the time of casting.
Interesting.
So they could get away with it. So there is a spell that I remember. This is an old school spell. I don't think it exists in 5th edition. So there's a spell that exists that essentially it's not so much a teleport, but what it allows you to do is it takes your character physically out of combat for like 3 rounds, like 3 initiatives, and then you come back. But the idea is that you've traveled time, so you get to like basically see what happened. You're kind of like traveling, I guess, faster in time. So for you, it's instantaneous. Like you just go into the future. It's kind of like I think it's like time jump or time step, but it's essentially that where for those 3 rounds, you can walk around like the battlefield, like you can move your character and do all of that. But as far as everyone else is concerned, you're not there.
Interesting.
So that I think could probably get away with this, but you'd have to cast it before he cast his spell.
I was in response to Cosmic. I think one of the biggest things for me is I think most magical items come with you, especially if they're on your person, at the time of whatever teleportation spell is. So even if you were to teleport at the time of casting, whenever you reappear, those magical items are still going to be on you, unless it's from other things in the environment.
But remember, the BBEG spell is instantaneous. So as long as you're not there at his time of casting, his goes off and you come back, his sphere is gone. Remember, that sphere is instantaneous. It only boom. Remember, when the BBG casts a spell, it's a 2-mile sphere. So he's saying that if you could teleport in any fashion when that sphere goes off, you are technically not at the location, so the sphere would go off, and then you'd reappear saved from all of the items, or saved from the destruction.
Interesting. That's a very I would say, because if you read you just looked it up, the blink spell, that spell literally just takes you into another dimension. I think that to me would be.
That's all about timing.
So in that one, at the end of your turn, as long as you roll higher than 11, you're gone. So on everyone else's turn, you don't exist.
Right. You only blink in.
You only blink in for your turn.
So
unless he held his action to do it when you reappeared, he's not going to get you.
Right. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, you could use blink even without a reaction, and as long as you had blink active, you would technically not be there on the BBEG's turn, and therefore the spell wouldn't affect your character. So if you want that for your players, that's how they would do that.
If they want to escape out of this, they better either all get blink, or whoever's carrying all the magic items, and be like, hey, guys, give me all your magic items. We'll put it in this bag of holding, and then I'll cast blink on myself. All right, we're good.
All right, take it easy, Mind's Eye. Thank you so much for showing up. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving forward. So, okay. So, starting to feel it. I'm starting to feel it. So, success or fail. The attunement slot is also destroyed along with the item. The attunement slot is also destroyed.
If the item requires attunement, you have lost an attunement slot.
Yeah, so you can't attune again. So it's almost like you're permanently attuned, but the item no longer exists. You can't unattune from it. So the link remained, but the item's gone.
Here's the question. The idea of this was to get these people into their what do you call it?
The shield, the scales.
The scale items, right? Don't they need to attune? Because they say you automatically attune to it upon it activating, right?
And that might be it because it's divine. It's a divine override.
So no matter what, you'll be
attuned. And I don't know if Cosmic said this before, but I don't remember if those... maybe I'm just making this up for the conversation, but I want to say he put somewhere briefly, either in chat or on one of his documents, that attunement slot does not take any unused one.
Interesting.
I'm pretty sure, like, if you were to die with one free attunement and this happened, I don't think his scale takes that attunement slot.
That might have been before I was capturing chat, so I'll see if I can look.
But
hey, Cosmic, if you can confirm that,
I want to say that he had somewhere the divine scale creates an attunement slot, and in case the character has none open. Okay, so it just creates its own. Gotcha. Right. Yeah. So if for some reason I could have sworn that it doesn't take one, but I guess it will take one or create its own. So if an item destroyed in this way uses charges, an additional 2d6 force damage per remaining charge upon destruction. Items stored in an extra dimensional space, bag of holding, portable hole, are also affected. All remaining contents become scattered in another plane. So basically, it rips your bag of holding a hole.
Wait.
So if you have an item inside your bag of holding, that item will explode, and the remaining items that are stored in that bag, all remaining contents are scattered into a different plane. So basically, something exploded in your bag of holding.
Is it all remaining contents of the exploded item or everything else in the bag?
I read that as everything in the bag. I read that it literally ripped a hole in your bag and
so that means your bag's destroyed no matter what rarity it was. So a bag
everything
of holding...
in the bag. So either it renders the bag of holding useless or the explosion mends itself after, like maybe it fixes itself after, but basically everything currently in the bag of holding is gone. Not exploded, just lost. Still existing. So if it's a personal item, bet your ass that's an adventure, because you're gonna go get that shit back.
Goodness gracious. All right.
But the thing is what is the rarity item of a bag of holding? Because if the bag of holding is the thing that is destroyed, you don't just lose the other items, you lose them completely because all of them will explode.
Well,
no, they'll probably just appear, right?
They should. The only time a bag of holding goes real crazy is when you try and stick it into another thing.
Cosmic says it makes the bag useless. The bag's only destroyed if its rarity is called. So the bag will become useless.
It's uncommon.
So if he just calls uncommon, and that magic bag of holding just destroys, you will just instantly just dump out everything that you ever had stored.
So here's the thing. If it's in the bag of holding, you don't take damage from it. Because it explodes in another somewhere else.
You wouldn't take damage of that, but you lose the items. So
you still lose the items, yes. So you could save yourself from the damage by putting it in a bag of holding, but if he called the bag of holding's rarity and then called everything else, then everything's just going to be sitting at your feet. Because if he called the bag of holding's rarity first, and the bag of holding would be destroyed and everything in it would come back here.
Would at your feet, yeah, it would just destroy. Yeah.
And then he would
as long as nothing was in the so as long as there was no other uncommon items in your bag of holding. Because if they both got destroyed, you'd both lose all your items into a different plane, and you'd lose your bag of holding in the explosion. So you'd have to hope that if he calls uncommon, you don't have an uncommon item in your bag of holding, so it does appear at your feet.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That's fucked.
I hope they learn about the spell before they get to the BBEG. So they can do some type of preparation for it.
When it comes to the rarity, if he calls common, it's a 10d12. And it goes up from there. 15, 12, 20, 12, 25, 12,
so it goes up by 5 12. For every rarity. Yeah. 5d12s for every rarity. Well, put it this way. The minimum damage is a 10 for common and a 30 for legendary. Yeah. You could only take 30 damage. Possibly. Unlikely, but possibly. Portable hole is rare, I think.
So, I'm assuming that this is, again, per item. So, per item that explodes.
Yes.
So, this is interesting because, again, this kind of showcases that 5th edition doesn't really have anything for this. Because while I like this, I don't think it's enough.
Interesting. Is it more?
I think this... I think this should...
Because I thought you said second edition was the lower rarities were akin to like a fireball. That 10d12 is already...
This is what I mean. Is like what my thing is it's not taking into account what's exploding. It's just anything. It's kind of we're showcasing that 5th edition doesn't have anything, so it's kind of just saying if it's that rarity, it should explode. But if I have a necklace of a certain rarity, but a +5 dagger of the same rarity, to me, those would explode differently.
Interesting.
So it's almost as if like, and it's really difficult because it's like, it's hard. I would say that what I would do is apply this as a base and then apply magical modifiers. So if it's a +1, add another like.
So like he did with the charges.
Yeah, exactly. So if it has charges, it gets additional damage. If it has plus values, magical plus values, those also do additional damage. So like right now he has what was it? If it's additional charge. So 2d6 force damage for every charge. So I would totally do like another d10 for every plus value. So if it's a +5, that's a 5d10. That's an extra 50 points, if not more, right? Because personally, I think like, I mean, in my mind, like a +1 dagger should be doing like 100 damage on an explosion. Like it's a magical item and it just exploded. I think a +5 should be like a devastating explosion. So personally, I think this is a good baseline, but I would like to see modifiers based on what explodes. Because if I have a beefed up, piece of armor that has charges and a +5, and it was in, I just think that should explode more than my dagger of the same rarity. So I think this is a good base. And again, it's also from the premise it's meant to kill the players. Remember, this isn't just a spell. This is a spell designed for two things: to make the challenge difficult, but to push the players into Game Plus. Right? So, that's really what we're trying to do, is push them into Game Plus mode.
I just had a thought just now, and it kind of goes back to, we had a talk a while back about scaling mundane weapons. We've been talking about, I think there was a moment we talked about how cantrips scale and stuff like that. I was playing recently, and I know that it sucks, especially as a spellcaster. Most spells, you add nothing to it. Most spells, you don't add your like spellcasting mod, you don't add anything to it.
Yeah.
And I think so often, like that's the case a lot of the times for a lot of things.
Because you're just manipulating the magic. You're not really doing anything. You're just the wand. You're just a living wand in the sake of what the magic's doing.
Right. But
outside of meta magic.
Think about how it feels like I'm a 10th level caster. I cast a 5th level spell and I do 10 points of damage. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, it feels bad. Like, it feels real bad. And especially if that happens like more often than not, you feel like you're not really a 10th level caster. You feel like you're a 3rd level caster. I can only do 10 points of damage around. I'm barely assisting my crew. Okay. So one of the things that I was thinking is like, maybe it's possible to like always add like maybe half the die, but like always add like you get at least 5 points or something.
How about this? How about this instead? For either just for this spell, I'm going to present it as just for this spell, but maybe big brain idea for how to do damage in the future, right? Because a lot of the times it does feel really weird to be a master, have a crit, and do 2 damage, because that's what you do 2 dice of roll and you do 2. Like, it doesn't make any sense to do that little damage, but it also doesn't make sense to always do max damage, right? It doesn't make sense to do static damage.
Agreed.
But it also doesn't make sense in every situation to do no damage, right? Which is why I always like with crits, I always double the damage or at least max damage, something like that, right? So what if in this particular case, because I don't know if this would really work for all damage types, although it would be a unique, interesting mechanic, like an alternative. But what about for this spell? When the spell goes off, like we said, it does this base. It will do the extra for charges, and I would say it should do extra for +1 for plus values. But what if when the spell goes off, it starts at max? So you calculate out, he calls rare, you calculate out 20d12. Right? So 240. 240 damage is going out, guaranteed.
Okay.
You roll your save. Your DC is 16. For every number you beat it by, I have to roll to see how much damage comes off. So if it's on rare it's 20d12, but if you roll like 6 above the DC or whatever, or you're because you have all your bonuses, you roll 6 above the DC, I have to roll a 6d12 and take that damage off. And that's what you stopped. So instead of this spell underperforming, all you can do is push back against it.
I really like that idea for saving throw spells.
I think
when it comes to saving throw spells, like having how well you do on the saving throw determine how much less damage you take. I really like that idea.
I think that this would represent that. Again, maybe not for every type of damage, maybe not for everything in the future.
For sure.
But for things like this, when you're just because again, having the spell go off and then having one of your, your massive players go 10 damage. Yay. That's nothing to me. You know what I mean? Like, it would suck. And I understand that's why Cosmic also has 3. But at the same time, it's like you shouldn't... It's almost like, do you really want to just guarantee that it goes off? Or do you want to have that, well, it's balance, right? Because again, is it supposed to be scripted? Is it meant to happen? Do you need them to die in this battle? Or do you just really, really want it to happen? Right? Like, how much effort do you really put into, like, making a scenario or a narrative work out? So it would be very interesting, to say the least. I think you're right, though. I think that making sure that this really pushes them to a damage, like either guaranteed half damage or something. I think there's ways to work around moments like this when you don't, like, again, how cool would it be where that's how you handle crits? You crit, it's guaranteed max damage. All they can do is save down. Right? Like, so it's like, it's like they have to do a save, if there's a save throw, it's guaranteed max or whatever, and then they have to save down. Or like,
I would like it to, if you're going to do it that way, it'd be guaranteed double max, and then they can save down from that. That way, they can't potentially save to 0.
Or max plus, like you roll, so you get max plus a roll or something. Yeah. And then there's a lot of different ways I think damage can be done. Cosmic says, as a reminder, the divine scales activate specifically when a character is making death saves, has one failure, and then fails again. So like it basically stops them from dying. So the scales morph into their auto-attune items and heals for 2 of their hit dice. So it doesn't heal them back for full. Now, this also does bring up something interesting too, is he has 3 of these. One of the things that I've been looking at this from a player point of view, right, is let's say I have one of these scales that hasn't been activated yet. Let's say I have a legendary sword, a very rare shield, and a rare... I think
you're about to go down the same rabbit hole I was about to.
The idea is that he has 3 of these spells to get me to activate my shield, or activate my scale, but at the same time, if he uses all 3 to do that, and he uses those top 3... I come back with my scale, which, great, I have a new shield, I have a new weapon, but now I'm completely armorless. Right? So that's another thing that now I'm starting to worry about having 3 is, I know narratively we want this to make sure it happens, but having 3 and calling different rarities really has the potential, depending on how all of the players are mixed out, that could really throw them off. Because yes, you are getting them their scale, but what if you take away everything else?
I have an idea, and especially because I think this might solve both problems, but imagine if you don't cast the command word. Imagine if you only cast it at the highest rarity. You cast it at legendary. And the saving throw that the players roll isn't for damage reduction, but it's for...
like rarity type?
It's for, like, depending on how well you do, you might not take a certain rarity, right? So if I roll higher than, say, like a 5, my legendaries don't go. If I roll higher than a 10, my very rares don't go. If I roll higher than a 15, my rares don't go. Like the higher you do, the less you do, And so, because if you think about it, the different casts, he can only choose one rarity every single time. Right? And it costs him, weirdly enough, it costs him the exact same amount of materials no matter which rarity he's casting, right?
That is true.
You know what I mean?
It's a very powerful spell. And it's like, why, again, unless you strategically really, really know about the party that's coming after you, which, I mean, you would assume lore-wise he does. I mean, they've freed his goddess. I'm pretty sure he knows everything he needs to know about them at this point.
They fought all of his little minions.
Yeah, so at this point, he knows what they're carrying. He could probably sense it. But that's where I'm just saying that having 3 options really could, if it worked out that way, where again he's trying to push this narrative and he wants to make sure this happens and get them their scales, what happens when the paladin comes back with no armor, you know what I mean, or the barbarian comes back with only a shield and no weapon. Like it's just the idea of if, and again, this is a lot of ifs. This is a lot of like potential bad situations, but that's where I'm hesitant on giving 3. I understand having 1 known and then 1 scroll having been prepared. But then having that third one, just it starts to dip into, it's going to be more on the DM. It's going to be more on Cosmic being very careful to use it, sparingly, balancingly, and not accidentally get to the point to where you've basically removed half their gear. And then again, what if you do these things? You've removed someone's armor and their shield, but not their weapon, or, like basically there's a mix match, right? Everyone's missing half their shit now, but you didn't kill them. God forbid you didn't kill them. Or they saved their very first time. All their death saves. Mm-hmm. Now they're weaponless, armorless, and scaleless. And still in the BBEG fight. And again, I'm not saying that this is like, I'm not saying that Cosmic would like focus on this spell and guarantee that this happens. But it is just from a player point of view, I'm trying to look at if I'm in this fight and this happens and I lose something massive, like my armor or whatever, and I get my death save. I get my first death save, I'm back up, my scale doesn't activate. The rest of that fight's going to be kind of bad for me. I'm going to go down again, and let's say I death save again. And then he does the spell again. Now I lose another item. By the time I finally get down and then get my scale item back, am I, as a player, going to even give a shit about this fight anymore? Like, there is that point of how much, how many hits am I going to take before I'm just like, okay, I lose. And I'm not, again, some people aren't like that. Some people are like, no, I'm going to be here until you kill me. But it just depends upon how that fight progresses, right? That fight could potentially just wear down the party to the point to where they're like, what's the point? Like, he just keeps throwing our items away. And then is the item they're going to get going to make up for it? So that's my initial knee-jerk hesitation when I look at one potential outcome. Maybe 3 is too much. 1, definitely not enough. For the purposes of what it's meant to do, to guarantee that the scale, like, it needs to...
I will also ask... Say somebody's down and this goes off. Or say it goes off and the first one puts them down. But 3 of their items, 3 technically different instances of damage.
Just stacks, right? So the first damage they took kills them, but then there's still more damage coming.
And so whenever you take that damage, depending on how it goes, sometimes it's like... They're always automatic fails. It's just how many automatic fails do you take?
And that's true, depending on what rules you use for death saves. So, if you take too much damage, you could automatically.
If we're talking Magic the Gathering, what hits the stack win?
Does
the scale interrupt the damage and bring you back up? And if it does is it going to bring you right back down again after you get back up again with that other?
Or is it just going to interrupt any further damage at that point once you hit the second failure? Because I'm assuming that the divine aspect will automatically trigger, right? So if you automatically, because he wrote it into the scales that at the second save or at the second death save, you are automatically up. So the divine thing will automatically trigger once you've taken your second death save, even if you're not the one rolling it, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like the whole power word kill polymorph argument. It specifically states you will revert back even if you die. Mm-hmm. Even if you hit 0 hit points, like, you're still going to go back. I think this is kind of the same thing. It's going to trigger, doesn't matter what else is happening around you, it's divine. You just basically, holy aura, you're up, you're son of God now. Like, that's your moment to just, without lack of a better word, that's your moment to shine. You're up. But it does still, just beg those questions of, is 3 too much for a single battle? I think 3 is great for lore, 2 for the battle, and then 1 for the players to have at the end of the game. Again, whether it's for another gaming session or just kind of as a prize of, you guys now hold the devastating, spell, kind of thing, right? Like just like the ultimate reward. But 3 in a fight, I'm wondering if, like, what situation does that truly benefit? Like, you know what I mean? Having that third one, like, it's almost like having that third one is just, I feel like it's there to guarantee, like, the narrative that it's going to happen. Whereas if it needs to happen, it should happen before the fight. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if I would want to rely so heavily on this spell.
That's an interesting point.
Like, I feel like this spell shouldn't be the
if it needs to happen, it should happen before the fight.
That or you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it should. Like, I think personally, and this is just how I think of like when I plan encounters, right? I'm thinking if I have 3 of these spells and the overall goal isn't to kill the party, but to kind of, get those latent abilities reactivated. Mm-hmm. I'm probably going to want it to start early or mid-fight, right? To kind of give them that second wind and turn the tide over, right? Narratively speaking, that's a great opportunity. You don't want to be like flooring the BBEG and then this happens and then you're just 10 times more powerful, right? You want either the, turn the battle moment where you're like, no, we're not dying, or you want that we've been fighting and now we can continue the fight, right? Like, you either want it to be neck and neck, or you just want this to be the switch that just changed the game, in my opinion. And so I'm either going to want that early, or I'm going to want that starting in the battle, right? Like, I'm going to want like maybe 1 or 2 people maybe not have theirs, but I either want the majority of them to have it, or I'm going to want to have it early. If I'm planning the battle and I have this 3rd spell, I would feel in my approach that 3rd spell is basically the end battle, where it's like, it still hasn't happened and I need them to do this, right? And it's almost like, if we haven't gotten there yet, then don't let it happen. Like, it's almost like, because if it's needed, if they can't kill the BBEG without it, it should have already happened. It's not fair to give them that necessity that they can't control. And you've talked about this before with player agency. You can't take that control away. But if they can beat this BBEG without them, it would just be really beneficial to do it. Then I understand why these spells are here. You want them to have these cool powers, but if they need them, it needs to happen so much sooner.
Imagine
I think the 3rd
if
spell,
everybody in the party has their scale activated except for one dude. Except for one person. And it's not necessarily that they can't beat the bad guy without it, but it's the fact for me that, say you want everyone to have it, just so that, like...
You want to end everything on a positive note. You want to end
everybody feels good. Everyone got a chance to, like, see their thing. And so you want... But the fact that this has to hit everybody, not just that one person, it's like,
you can't solo him out. You have to go after everybody.
And it's not, again, not necessarily a bad thing, but
not everyone's going to have a full replacement, right? Like, if you lost your armor...
My idea is, like, I think it would be really cool or really awesome if not only the divine items were immune to this, but almost the divine items protect you from this spell's effect. So imagine if you have your item...
So if your item's already activated, your
good.
Other items won't...
You're safe from this. It's almost got this aura, because especially for me, it would make sense lore-wise, because it is her scale, and it is her blood.
And so she's just like, no. And that would turn the tide for the BBEG narratively, because he's been preparing this massive spell. He does that, and he doesn't realize, because from the BBEG's point of view, I don't know this, Cosmic, but from what I would understand, the BBEG doesn't know they have these scales. So if they have half of them are active and he has this spell,
I'm thinking that too,
to go, and he activates it and 3 of them go down, but the other 3 just stare at him, that would be massive narratively.
And the BBEG gets taken back. He's like,
you should be dead. And they're just like, scales, bitches. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and if they knew about it, like, as they stand there, the wave goes over them, their 3 buddies die. But then you can narratively say, like, all of their scaled items, like, if it's the helm, if it's their armor, start to glow.
Yes.
And it's like, in like defiance.
That would be fire.
And then, oh my God, Cosmic. And then not only do you have those 3 and they get their little moment of like defiance because they're standing there with glowing weapons, their buddies start to glow and stand the fuck up. And now the BBEG has to sit there, look at the party he thought he was about to decimate, and realize, I can't use that spell anymore.
And then it wouldn't matter. Like, he could use it again on the people that don't have it. Like, say if it didn't work on everybody.
But anybody that stood up glowing, because then you could have it to where, because that spell activated it, for the rest of the fight, they glow. So if anyone's not glowing, the BBEG knows they... So it's like, it's a marker for both sides. But that... narratively would, especially mid-fight, would just turn everything and make the players feel like, I could understand how the players would just feel unstoppable at that point, because having all of them take damage, die, and then get their stuff is one thing. But to have a few of them just 0 damage and just go, wait, what happened? Like, wait, we're not going to roll damage? Be like, no, your sword. That sword that, you got from the scale seems to be glowing. You know what I mean? That would make it stand out. And it would make sure that its purpose is still there. It's still really, really powerful. Even if you only had one person. If you had one person who had activated their ability, the entire team goes down, but one person stands in defiance.
And he doesn't even know why.
And then again, the rest of the people start to stand up with the same glow in different items.
That would be so
fire. It would make the BBEG think twice. And again, I know that a lot of people don't really care because they're like, but I'm the BBEG. Like, he's not thinking twice. But it's like, narratively, from the player's point of view, they want to see that, right? They want to see the things that happen to them, not just go, okay, next round. Whose turn? You know what I mean? They don't want to just go to the next initiative. They want that, they want that narrative of showing what happened. They want to see that fear in the BBEG. They want to believe that they are doing something outside of just the dice rolls, right? And that is such a good idea to have, if it's already active, this spell, because it's the blood. Why would the blood affect the scales, right? They shouldn't cancel each other out. That sounds fucking dope.
I think it's cool.
I think that's such a cool
like a mid-fight cutscene. I like it. I freaking like it.
Let's see. So that's the intent. 2 for the battle and 1 is a potential loot. Okay, cool. I'm glad he said that. So he's not intending to use all 3. He has the 1 innate spell. He has 1 for the scroll to be used by the BBG if he needs it.
And one's
one is meant to be. Thank you so much for having that, Cosmic, because like I said, it wasn't like a game change, like a deal breaker, but I just felt like 3 spells implies that it's like, I need this to happen, so I'm making sure that I have it planned, right? Instead of make it earnable and make it feel like it was earned. So I'm so glad that you actually have that as an intent. And then, I guess he likes your idea of like the mid-fight cutscenes. I always like those. And we've talked about this before because there's a fine line between giving players all of the agency to do and run their characters, but running a narrative. And one of the hard things is taking over the narrative when it removes player agency, right? Usually you and I are 100%, it's all about player agency. Don't take it away. Always give the players the choice and never make them railroaded. But I've always argued that there's an exception to every rule. And
I agree.
When it comes to a narrative,
I do.
I've said this before, and I know that this is like kind of one of my controversial topics, but there's a player entitlement to player agency. And as you and I are the biggest proponents of player agency, if we can give the player an option or a choice, we will. Like, very much in 99.9% of times, even if we like a standing rule, we're like, yeah, but that doesn't really tell the player what they can do. Like, we will add to it. But there are times where I will say that it is, for lack of a better word, necessary, or more so beneficial to let the DM and have the DM just kind of like, I need to tell this part of the story. I know you guys wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't because like there's like those moments like you see this thing, right? Like if a cop in real life, like anyone would think like what they would do, like, we see like, like if someone came to bully you or if a cop walked up to you, but in reality, you really don't know what you would do because there's a lot of things happening, right? In reality, you're going to react how you're going to react. But like, I've had times where it's like the players are hassled by the guards and they're trying to hide something, and the guard will walk up, grab them on the wrist and be like, well, what's this in your back pocket? They'll be like, I wouldn't have let them do that. I would have done blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I get it, guys. You want to have a fight but look at the situation, guys. You have 9 guards around you. You're going to die. You're going to fucking die if you wrestle this guard. The entire town's going to be against you. The king's going to fire you. You're going to be thrown in prison. You're going to be hanged tomorrow morning. Or, narratively speaking, he walked up behind you and just grabbed it out of your fucking pocket. Can you just fucking let that happen and let me tell the fucking story so we can all have fun? And again, it's like there's that very, very fine line of, I don't want to take away from you. I don't want to tell you how your player would play. But there are times where it's like the story just kind of doesn't need to go on, but there are aspects where it's like, I feel players are pedantic when it's like, but I don't like that. It's like, but if you don't like that, then there's no story, because you can't always be the right one. You can't always have a positive outcome.
In the details. And I think there's a big difference between wanting to do what your character would do and taking away from everybody else's story. And I think a big piece of this comes down to 2 things: the players trusting their DM, and vice versa.
Yes,
right?
I would 100% agree. More so the first one than the second, but 100% agree with you. Yes, the DMs do not trust their players. I don't really trust my players first off. It takes a while for me to let you guys take over your own narrations because you have to. It's not so much that I don't think you guys can. It's more of I want you guys to get a feel for how I push a story along, so you guys don't.
And I think that
go off on
and
rails.
The same thing is true for the DM when it comes to taking over like what a character's doing. Is because like if you take over the character that I've been building, I've been setting a precedence for them. There's this big brooding bad guy, and you make him look like a bumbling idiot in this scene that you're playing out. It very much detracts from the immersion of the story, just like everything any other.
Again, unless there is the only way I would see that, right? Like, again, I hate that where it's like you're the big guy, you're always starting fights, and then I take him over, and you just like get walked over, right? That's not normal. You wouldn't normally allow that, unless, of course, you could write it in, and be like, hey, that guy that you've like as a kid. No, he's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to be like, my character would never be allowed to be talked down to. Maybe unless it's someone that you look up to.
And there are definitely elements that can play to it.
But that's the point, is the DM needs to know when's it acceptable,
back to trusting your player and trusting the DM and knowing, hey, this is the type of character that I've been building and creating. And yes, he is emotional when it comes to his past, but when it comes to anybody that he doesn't know or has no connection to, he could not give a rat's ass less, And just, it's the mentality, it's how you present it. And even though stuff like that needs to happen, I do agree that there are times where you can just take that and let that happen and be like, hey, we need this to progress this way. We need to go this way.
And it's more of my biggest thing is like DMs, be better at reading your players, reading the characters. Don't do what's best for your story. Do what's best for theirs. Like that's the DM's approach. That's my advice for DMs. But for players, again, don't be so entitled that you have to control everything. Like I understand
it's not just your story.
Yeah, and it's like I understand really if the DM is going to do something drastically bad, right? But if you just don't like it, if it's just like I don't like my character, looking like that, it's like I'm not playing your character differently. It's just the situation, right? Like, so someone insulted your character and you're going to shut up about it right now because you recognize you're in a situation you shouldn't talk. Like, that's different than just than just not letting them respond, right? Like, basically saying you're going to be not your character versus here's a reason why you're going to be slightly different.
And I think even if you can explain to the player because how it would make sense to your character that things are unfolding this specific way.
That's also important. Instead of just being the DM that says it's because I said so, being the DM being like, look, you look around and you clench your fist, you're about to pop this guy in the face, and then you read the room, and I'll even go so far as like, some players aren't great at interplay. Like playing between characters. They're great at dialogue with the NPCs. They're great at dialogue, just with, NPCs and the DM, but they're not great at really working together or like role playing with each other. So I'll even do a thing where it's like, I would have attacked this guy, but like, yes. And as you do, as you feel that rage, you clench your teeth, your fists are ready to go up. You're ready to pop this guy. You do one quick glance around the room to make sure that, get your bearings, know where the exit is, feed their character and be like, but you read the room. You're realizing the exit's not very easy. This guy's looking a little shifty, might have a weapon. You see some people. And then I'll even bring another character and be like, and then you notice this character who I know how they play. Again, you have to trust the DM. I would go, and this character, they walk up to you, put their hand on your shoulder and just be like, and I won't say what they would say. Just like, then they put their hand on their shoulder. Now, again, the other player could tell me that they wouldn't, but I've read the room and I'm like, that's your character. Like Venla, I would totally do that if you didn't just act that out, I'd be like, and then Venla walks up and just kind of like the Siggy just puts her hand on your arm and then just kind of tugs at you. You wouldn't argue with that. You'd have been like, yeah.
Venla's a pacifist. Venla wants to stop the,
but that's the difference is I would know that character. I would know that Venla would be more than happy to calm Siggy down on a moment of that noted. But there's a difference of doing that with someone who doesn't give a shit about Siggy. Like if you just didn't give a shit about that character, you wouldn't walk up. I wouldn't have you being like, oh yeah, and he walks up and is like, no, we don't need to do this right now. I'd be like, why would I say that? I'd want him to punch him. I want him to go to jail. You know what I mean? Like there's so many ways about that you don't want to just tell your story. You want to tell everyone's story properly.
Yes.
So yeah, I really, there is post game after the BBEG fight, which is awesome. I do like that.
Oh,
which
very
makes
cool.
sense for the extra script or the extra scroll. So knowing that there's only going to be 2 usable scrolls, like the idea is to only use it twice, I 100% like that. Makes me feel a lot better about this. As for like the like the setting and the lore base, I think it fits right in. I would like to know a little bit more about how he came about. Like, I would just like to personally know like the idea behind the character, how, the BBEG, how he created this spell, what was the thought process behind why, because I do think the magic fits in the world, but I'm not connecting the why. Why this spell? Why this creation? Why this BBEG? Like, is it just a protection spell? Does he just know people that are going to come after him at this height of his power are going to have magical items on them? And they're more likely not going to know any better, so they won't have just artifacts? Like, does a spell have something else that it does, and this is just the mortal effect? Like, does this also hurt gods? So he's protecting himself against future, like, because it doesn't do it, it's immune against divine stuff. But like, I'm just more of like, the magic fits. Like, everything makes sense for what else Cosmic has presented to us. I'm more confused on why the BBG spent so long and so much to create this particular spell. You know what I mean? Like, you could have created like a much hyper version of like Static Shield, where it's a 2-mile wide sphere that nothing can penetrate and you can't be hurt inside of. Like, there's other ways about it. So to destroy magic, I want to know what's the drive. Why does he want to destroy these magic items? Because it's not just defensive, right? Like, this is not just a defensive spell. This is not a spell you created because you're worried someone's going to attack you with magic. This is something that there's an intent. 2 miles worth of destruction of magic. If this was defensive, you wouldn't need it to be that big, right? Like, in my mind, if you tell me this spell was created, this was for a purpose. Like, it's like saying a nuke was designed for defense. We did not make nuclear weapons.
You know what I find interesting? It feels like the spell is not for them, but he's testing it on them, or maybe he's using it on them.
Perfect. Even if that was explained in the
it almost feels like he wants to like go into a town or something, because you said this might be the full radius of some town. Imagine you go in there and you want to screw up anybody that's any kind of threat to you. Those are going to be the people with magical weapons. Guess what? Come on over here. I challenge all of you. Kaboom.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much. I don't believe this is a defensive. I just as a player would want to dive into, where did he get the idea? How did he come up? How did he come up with like how this works and why? Like, what was his goal? And I hope that's kind of explained in that post game.
Yeah.
Finding the scroll, maybe finding notes about it, maybe finding up his bigger, evil plan. Maybe he's partnered with somebody. Like, all of these could be really cool, like follow up stuff. In that post game.
Right.
The millions of goddess scales left behind where she died morph into bricks and form massive 15-floor tower, 14 inside, 1 outside. Each floor is 1 encounter, not always combat, and the final floor is the true final boss. Okay, so you already have all of the other towers that you had to go to, release the goddess, and now there's a final tower.
Interesting.
Okay,
bet.
Oh my god, you know what I want?
Tower of Terror?
No, what would be really dope is at the end of this. Because you can go one of 2 ways, where it's like, what if this is the spell that can beat the BBEG, the true BBEG? What if like they are like a legendary artifact? Like, what if they like what if they represent that and this can actually kill them? Like, what if this spell is like their power word?
What if they are just like chock full of like so many magical items?
Because it's like, inside of her tower. So what if like the whole point was he knew about that and he was making this ore?
See, so it does make sense that he's using it for not her.
But here's the other option too.
Or for not them.
That's the evil version. You want to flip the script on them and do that whole thing where at the very end you find out the BBEG was actually the good guy all along. You find out that there's something wrong with the universe. And this spell to kill like the final boss is actually to bring back the goddess and reset things to where the way it should have been. Like, what if that was the whole thing where it's like, yes, he tortured her and all of that, but it was actually meant to like
cycle of rebirth or whatever.
To basically like bring her back to before she ever known, like, what if she like, the idea is like the longer she lives, the more she, grows in experience. So his mindset was, if I rebirth her, she won't have any pain, right? So the goddess will live.
Don't I remember him saying the end of this is going to be a version of the dragon version of the dragon is going to be the top of the tower.
No, I think when they die, they become like when the characters die, they'll become eggs. I believe is what happened.
No, but I mean like at the top of the tower, I swear he said that it was going to be a weird, like, dark version of the dragon goddess that they have to fight against.
Be the dark version, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe.
Like I said, I think this spell has. I think there's a lot of lore mixture that could absolutely be developed into this. Okay, so let's talk about this. So let's talk about so more from Cosmic. If the party wins the true final battle, any survivors ascend to godhood. That's right. So any survivors will officially ascend to godhood, taking the goddess's place. The true final boss is the spirit of the goddess when she was at her peak. And the battle is more akin to the reenactment fight from the BBEG in her 10,000 years. That's right. So yeah, you're kind of like reenacting it to put her soul to rest, kind of thing, and ascend.
But I do like that twist. That kind of makes sense too.
I like this. I would like to see this spell come back and be a bigger part, like a major part of that battle. Like maybe it's one of those things where it's like you have to cast, like they don't know it yet, but like maybe you get into the battle and you can't do her damage because like it's one of those, you know, like kind of like a video game boss battle where she has like something that's protecting her, like a shield. You have to use this spell.
Scales count as magic armor,
and so you have to use this spell to dispel all of those, and then you can start to do damage to her.
That's crazy. That would be legit.
There's a lot of different things.
I could totally see that.
All right, so as a 9th level spell, how are we feeling about this? We know it's based on lore, so we're already going to have to approach it with, you know, the fact that it's based in a very specific lore. The more we've talked about it, the more I do think it teeters towards 9th level. I think it's definitely leaning on the side of defensive 9th level. I think it could use some tweaks in order to better represent a 9th level spell. I do think a little bit more damage. I do think that while these amounts are good, I think that exploding magical items, in my personal opinion, should be a lot more devastating, which is why I don't think that this is bad for the spell to do this much damage. But again, for the purpose that this isn't just... Again, we don't know why the BBG created this. So the fact that it could do so little damage from an item exploding, not just from the point of view of combat, right? It's not just from the point of view of mechanically speaking, it could do very little damage in combat. This is also per item that explodes. And that's just, to me, it's like, but each item, I mean, and you could make the argument that not every item will do damage. So, there's a lot of arguments to be made, but the higher level items, right? The ones that are actually magical, the ones that have charges, like, I'm just not sure that this represents what's really stored inside of them, right? I'm not really sure that does what it's intended to do. So yeah, I would like to see it do more damage, but I think it's definitely within the realm of 9th level. I think encounter balancing wise, I'm very happy that he's only using 2 and not all 3. That's the intent.
Right.
Made a common 10d12, so a wizard has a chance of not being one shot, even if they start with full health, since wizard for me, yeah, and that makes sense too. Like,
I would say if the goal is to bring him down, then you're bring him down.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
And that's kind of my intent too, because I mean that's the out of game reason. Again, we don't really know what the lore balancing is. Again, the saving throw, I would like to see that adjusted just a little bit. I just think that, again, it would just be hard to justify why I could dive out of the way of my armor that I'm wearing exploding on. Mm-hmm. But that's more pedantic than anything. I also don't think it needs a saving throw in general. Just period. Like, if you're going to do a saving throw, I'd like to see it more realistic, but otherwise, I just say remove it. Why bother? Just let it explode. Let them take the damage. Like, that's the whole point.
I mean, yes.
It's an instantaneous...
I will say... Like what
we talked about before, too. I will say instantaneous is not something to react against.
That makes it an auto hit, and there are not very many spells, no matter what level they are, that just do damage.
And it's because it doesn't target anybody.
Like, even 9th level, there's no 9th level spells that I can think of that are just
not even power word kill.
Power word kill technically doesn't have a saving throw, so I would say power word kill is
but
one.
It does target you.
You have to target something, but like magic missile. Magic missile is a 1st level spell, but it's a spell that just hits its target.
Yeah,
it just does the damage no matter what. You're not escaping unless you got shield or something specific to counter it.
Which is another good point. That's why this really does deserve to be in the 9th level spell, because it really is jumping that gun. Now, again, 2 miles, that's a lot.
Yes.
So maybe drop that down. But the effect, I don't think the effect is... Now, here would be something interesting. Here would be... How do you think about this? Instead of the spell doing damage, like the roll table says here. What if the damage was based off the item that exploded? So you add rarity plus the magical effects and all that, you make your own damage. But what if these rolls, these 10d12 or whatever, however you want to adjust them, what if those were not the damage, but the amount of items within that radius that exploded? Closest to the source outward.
Interesting.
So the idea is that because every item in 2 miles, I mean, it just opens up a lot of questions about what this thing can do. Mm-hmm. But again, that's also meaning that like everything is going to explode. Whereas like the idea of you roll to see how many, so maybe only part of the party gets hit, right? And it's closest to the enemy out. Mm-hmm. So if the wizard's way back there taking pop shots, he may not actually get hit by this spell because you only went through 5 items and the first 3 people had them all.
Right.
So that could be another option, but then that would severely reduce unless you're doing like a 10d12, so 12 magical items, and let's face it, the whole party, that's all of their items.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that could be a different way to balance it because then you're mix and matching how many items you're making explode. But again, the radius, I think the radius still fits with the level 9 spell. You're absolutely right. An automatic hit with that much damage, but it's not guaranteed damage because it has to have a magical item of the equal radius.
That is true.
Or, I mean, of the equal rarity. So there's balancing going on here. And I do think it justifies light
level. And it
technically
doesn't even, that's what I find interesting is it doesn't even, I like the fact that it just automatically hits the item because it's not being cast against a person.
Yeah, it just overcharges all magical items.
Exactly.
It's like you just basically flood them with divine energy and they can't handle it. Because I like to think
that actually also makes sense why it doesn't affect divine items.
I like to imagine it like the idea of the reason why magical items need to be of a certain value is because they have to be able to hold, like they have to be of a certain value to be able to hold the minimum amount of magic to be magical. But I also believe that there's an opposite side of that, right? A cap, how much it can handle before the physical material just would deteriorate and explode, right? So I like that idea that this is just a divine flood of divine magic that any mortal item, legendary or less, just physically cannot be imbued with, and it just explodes.
That would make a lot more sense why you need all that God's blood.
Yeah, and then that would be explained. So yeah, I think my biggest things that I would say are just the costume components. I think just sound a little bit arbitrarily too big. I don't think they need to be. I mean, just saying God's blood I think is enough. Like,
I will also say I don't think specifically this spell at the very least does not need to be a bonus action. Like, it doesn't really benefit it a whole lot.
Exactly, and that was my other thing. Is I think that the argument that other 9th level spells aren't bonus actions isn't the strongest argument, but this spell, I think with the idea that it doesn't enhance anything and cannot really be enhanced, that would eliminate it from a bonus action, right? Or being a bonus action would entail that this is an enhancement to something or has the chance to be enhanced. The fact that this is a standalone and does what it does at the rate that it does, it doesn't need to be anything. I mean, if you think about this outside of the last battle, right? Outside of a D&D game, this is the final fucking word. Like, this command word that he says is that's it. The game's fucking over. The battles, outside of the party, outside of the actual like D&D concept of the adventurers, nobody stands in this dude's way. This is the final fucking spell on a mortal level, right? So it really, it doesn't need to be a bonus action because what the fuck else are you going to do? You're going to level a town and then what? Swing a sword at the air? Like, you're going to go have a cup of tea. Like, the battle's over, initiative done. So I personally think like, the bonus action doesn't, I mean, it doesn't really give it anything. I don't think it takes away and I don't think it does anything. So is it unbalanced for it? Not
I will
really.
say
it just doesn't make much sense.
I put it this way: when it comes to like balancing things, it's like it feels like you have the set of scales, right? But instead of there just being 2 sides, there's a whole bunch of different sides to balance these scales, right? Yeah. Imagine if you had like a 4-way scale or something like that. How much would you have to put on each side? And so, if we feel like we're lacking in one area, like, hey, we didn't do a whole lot, we didn't do level 9 damage in this spell, right? So let's do something else to make it feel like a level 9 spell.
Yeah.
And we'll make it a bonus action. That makes it cooler. That makes it more effective. And I think that there are times where we try to, I know this is the case for me, where I'll just try to find a reason to make this make sense here. It's like, oh, it would make more sense as a 5th level spell if I had this range or whatever else. And so I'll do that, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. But I do really
I mean,
the idea.
You even brought it up before too. Why not just make this akin to a? I mean, I know this doesn't really work for. I don't know really how Fifth Edition decides when you can use these and when you can't. Like, I don't really understand like when they delimitate. But this sounds, instead of a spell, it almost sounds a little bit better like what we were talking about before, like a legendary action or a layer action, right? Like just it kind of is akin to that. Realistically, it is akin more to a traditional like legendary action.
I could honestly see him, especially being a wizard, and imagine they're coming to find him in his lair, his tower, his whatever. I could see him rigging his space like and filling it with a bunch of like God's blood in it, and basically he can cast some triggering spell of his own that just like floods the chamber with this divine energy, and certain things will explode and stuff like that. I could see it being done very much like a layer action outside of an actual spell.
Yeah. And again, I think maybe just because I think of that, because like when I think of a spell, part of that is also to be like he said, there is a spell that the players can use. So making it a spell is also to make it long, like to make it live, right? I like layer, like when I think of like, even though I'm not a big fan of them, legendary actions, layer actions, those are more things I find akin to, these are specific to this creature only, this location only, whereas a spell kind of designed to be taken and reused. And so maybe that's where I'm also going with it. I don't think that changes anything about it. Let's see. What do we got here from Cosmic? Saving throw bypasses AC. I don't want the party to use AC buffs to negate the spell if I roll a 1.
That's fair.
That's good. And then plus, since it's a dex save, evasion and uncanny dodge can be used as reactions. And again,
do you want them to be able to reduce the damage more? And that's kind of what I was thinking with what we were talking about before, making them immune to it if they have their thing up. Like,
yeah, I think that
you
would just
want
solve
them
it.
to go down, right? Like
but realistically, you only want them going down more specifically if they haven't triggered. Because again, if this is used, if you're trying to use this to trigger. And let's just say you didn't use it right away, right? If you don't open the battle with this to kind of like set the playing field, what if you kill half the party with this that already have everything triggered? They're going to stay down now.
Yeah.
Because guess what? If you make them all go down, 1 or 2 people might do their second death save and come up with the scale, but the rest of the party are down and they're making death saves. You could potentially TPK, the party inadvertently with one of these spells too. So having the divine immunity, I think lore is so good.
And I think it should be only if it's a scale. Like if they have a different divine weapon.
Yeah, no, it's not anything divine. Like it's only if their scale is activated. Yes, only if they have that particular item. Because then it also, again, works. Because again, let's say you gave the paladin a giant sword or a giant shield. But then, so he entered the battle, already has his item. But then you take away his armor. Because the spell exploded his armor. That puts him at such a disadvantage. Is the scale even worth it now? Like, is the scale weapon or shield that he has, is that really going to make the battle worth it? Because they're not going to be one-to-one replacements, right? They're not all going to get the same type of items. So my biggest thing there is, again, just...
Theoretically, that could happen anyways. Like, say if the paladin didn't have his sword up yet, and he's using his regular sword, it happens to him, his armor goes down, and then he comes back with his sword. Now he's in the same position.
Same exact thing. And that's where it's like, that's why I'm thinking like the sooner the better, to kind of like figure all of that out. But that is a touchy area. You could end up screwing a player. And that's inadvertent. Unfortunately, no matter how you dice this, if you're going to potentially take something away that's at random, you are going to run the risk that you could literally destroy a player's experience right out the gate. The moment this goes off, you could just screw the rest of the combat. But again, that's not a bad thing. It's just it's a potential. It's a small potential. It's
and
like 1%.
I will say this: getting screwed over as a player is the perfect recipe for innovation.
Yeah.
Right. It's a situation where a lot of the times, depending upon who your DM is and how well they're willing to work with you, especially if it was something that was like unintentional, like you can find a creative way out of that situation. So I don't want to like completely dog on like how you can find your way out of this. Like, yes, I no longer have my armor, but we were able to, I don't know, bless this thing and wrap him around. I don't know, just do something to create some.
And again, it's also a lot on the DM, because it would be on the DM to know who's wearing what and what level of destruction would be devastating to which party member, right? Like
Right.
you would have, I mean, if you're going to take, the mage's armor away, I mean, they're a glass cannon anyway. Like you wouldn't be as worried versus taking your paladin's armor or shield away, right? Like there's definitely going to be severities that the DM will have to keep in mind here.
Which is why I think it might be creative or something to think about that this could be something that is, rather than just a massive AoE, it's more of a targeted thing. Even if it's like a cone or something, like I can still get the whole party in a fat cone, right? Depending on how far back I am.
And that would also allow you, if you only have 1 or 2 players, you could just specifically make sure that you activate them, right? You could basically, single them out with this spell. Mm-hmm. So that's another option. I mean,
like a 90-foot cone is insane.
That's insane.
But it still would do exactly what you need to do. All you'd have to do is move himself back.
But again, that changes the lore based on what he made it for. So there is a small balance there. That would directly change why he made this spell. And we don't know that yet. So without knowing why he made the spell, it's hard to say like how drastically we could change it. But I do agree, like there is something to be said for making sure that it gets used for its purpose, and still is spectacular and devastating and scary. But you just don't want to get to that point to where you put your players in a situation where once it goes off, it's like, oh, well, game's over. And, that could happen. Like, TPKs happen. Like, you never want to never have that happen, but you don't want to, like it's as a DM, you can always make that happen. Like, you could just literally say, you're all dead. Like, hey guys, there's nothing stopping you from just...
There was a 9th level wizard hiding in the bush, and he did cast Meteor Shower on all of you.
Oh, yeah.
All happened to be
so you
dead.
open the door? Okay, well, there are 10 beholders behind the door.
And
you're all
4
stoned.
more appear behind out of you.
It's like, you can kill, like, TPKs are not fucking hard, okay? But never TPKing. Like, having a rule that you won't TPK or Deus Exing, Deus Ex Machina, the game where you fudge your numbers. Like, I will be 100% honest. I have definitely fudged my numbers when cinematically it made sense. Like, I have saved the life of a player or killed a player off, specifically if it made more cinematic sense to not go with the dice roll. But few and far between, and never railroady. Like, never in a situation where it didn't make sense and there wasn't some sort of narrative purpose. But more times than not, it's for the player's benefit, not mine. Like, I rarely do something against the player for narrative purpose, because I think that them getting out of it unexpectedly is better narratively than them falling into something that they had no idea that they could fall into. Right?
I would also say more times than not, that is the exception to the rule. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the dice tell the story and we're re-rolling accidentally. It's the most beautiful thing that it ever was supposed to be.
And that's why I lean towards dice tell the story all the time. But, cinematically, it's like if someone's, so if you're like on the last hit of the BBEG, it's been a long fight, and he saves out. Oh, he missed the save. It's like, I'm done with the fight. You guys are won. Like, once a few more rounds. And honestly, if cinematically... this should be like, if you walk up, like someone knocked him prone and you're the big like brute and you're like, I walk up to him and I just stab him through the ground, right? And then you roll and then like I do other stuff and it's like, he won't die. And I'm like, no, am I really going to make it go to the next like person who's going to walk up and kick him and that's going to be the killing blow? Cinematically, I want it to be the dude who just stabbed him like as he's crawling away.
That's really hard for me because there'll be times where like, because you don't want them to not roll. You don't want them to feel like you're just handing it to them.
Exactly.
You want them to feel like I did a thing. But if they roll and get like a nat 1 on the roll and it's like...
Well, and that's why there are times where we've talked about this. We in the episode role play over rolling. I did a whole episode on that, where in those moments, if it's like one of those things where it's like, look, man, the BBG has like maybe 2 hits left and he has no more spells. You guys are all at half health or more. Like, if you as a DM can look through this and go, all right, I can end this spectacularly, or I can just let it be drawn out and whoever gets the final hit gets... Like, there are some players who you should let the final hit go to the final person because they'll make it best, right? But then there are times where it's like, cinematically, this would be the great death shot. All right, you know what? You're going to attack him next. Go for it. He's too low. Like, I wouldn't even, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, if there's a moment where it's like, he's prone and you just want to stab him, I'm not going to let you roll. Like, just do damage. Like, why ruin such a great moment where your character's big, like you were talking about, right? Big, broody guy. No, sorry. Similar to what you were talking about in terms of player agency. You don't want to take a player and make them look like a fool after they've built up all this stuff, right? And sometimes the dice do that to you. Sometimes you make a bad roll and you act the fool. That's funny because that's life. But if you have the big brute who's finally going to do that death blow, bring the literal hammer down while the BBEG is prone, do you want to give them the opportunity to roll a 1 and look like a fool? And it's almost like the same thing where instead of taking it away from them and saying, I'm going to make you look like the fool, this is almost a moment where I'm like, I don't want you to look like a fool. Not right now. I want this to be like
so badly.
And that's where role play over rolling sometimes will come into play. And that's where in those few times I will fudge the numbers and be like, he didn't make his save or he missed you, because cinematically it works better overall. And again, remember, at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, the story, not the dice.
Yes.
Like the dice the dice help the story, and sometimes the dice do tell the story, but at the end of the day, everybody, like, I get it. You don't want to cheat. Nobody wants to just be handed a victory. But there's a difference between like, hey, you guys are just going to win this battle regardless, versus okay, there's no way, unless I just crit 9 times in a row and you all miss me, there's no way I'm winning this, right? There's the line. The line is like when you just see the writing on the wall and they've earned the victory. That's where I flip the switch. You know what? You're going to earn this. Like I never let you guys just have anything. I mean, I have tried to kill you guys before and it's failed. But once you've earned that victory, I want you guys to have the biggest victory, right? You know what I mean? Like that's the thing is once you feel that they've earned it, that's when you can kind of give it to them, but you don't have to give it to them and make them feel like, okay, like they're just pushovers now.
Yeah.
But it's just that whole thing of like, when you know that they've earned it, why make that experience lesser? You know what I mean? Like, why, if you know that they've won this battle, why draw it out those 2 or extra 3 rounds just so you can down one more player and burn their last health potion? Or knowing that they don't have any health potions, you're still going to continue the fight and you're still going to try to get that crit just so you can down their player right at the end of the battle. Like, again, TPK is fine. I don't mind killing off players. But does that really cinematically make this game... Are they really going to walk away tonight being like, yeah, that was a hell of a battle. We won? Like, no one wants to walk away with those. And that's... I feel like too many people are so like... We got to follow the rules. We got to follow the dice. We got to do this. And that's what creates those gameplays where everyone's just like, I mean, that is what happened. No one did no one cheated. No one did anything wrong, but you can't say you had fun. And it's like, to me, I'm fully one of those DMs. I'm okay fudging things and bending some rules if it means the difference between you walking away being like, that was fucking cool. And, that was a gaming session. To me, that's the delimiter, right? Because we always talk about it. It's all about having fun. You don't have to walk away with every gaming session being the best. But I never want my players walking away disappointed. The only thing you should ever be disappointed at in my games is that we're stopping. Like, the only thing I want you disappointed at is that we're not continuing. I never want you walking away being like, I might show up next week. Like, that would just be devastating.
Yep.
Because, again, it's like, I know people feel bad about like dice rolls. Like, if you have a player who, if they roll bad and they're just like, I don't want to play this game anymore. Fuck them. Fuck that player up the ass. Who cares? But if it's just one of those things where it's like they were trying really hard and things just, didn't work out for them, but you could have like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's a difference between just being like, man, the dice just didn't work out for us versus, why did I even show up today for this game? You know what I mean?
I will say it can be incredibly discouraging when
that's a good word. That was the word.
It feels like I just don't want to play anymore if this is what it's going to look like. And
we get that feeling most with inconsistency. You and I will always get that feeling once there's an inconsistency.
What will kill it for me almost in an instant. But I will also say that in moments like that, like, I know this is kind of lightweight off topic, but some of my other friends that I play with, they've talked a lot about trying to help with, really bad dice rolls with stuff like inspiration, or, if you roll bad enough, you'll get to like add certain stuff to your rolls just to make it feel like you can do more. You can like dig deep and you can like get stuff out of you, And so
I'm always cool with that. My biggest thing is just, it has to be properly balanced, but it has to. But we always say that word, which is it has to come with an equal amount of failure. Like, I'm 100% understanding that there are some failures that just feel worse than others, and some that don't feel deserved. Right? Just sometimes it just doesn't feel deserved. Your character is the best of the best of the best, and you still rolled a nat 1. Sometimes it's just not deserved, right? But there are other times where it's like, I don't mind pulling deep. Hey, you know what? In this moment, adrenaline rush, roll again. Or you know what? You just saw your buddy go down. You're not going to stand for that. Like, I'm totally fine in moments narratively giving bonuses like that. But it's the difference when it's every time.
Yes.
It's different when it's like, well, I rolled a 1 and can I do this and can I push? Like, again, this isn't Call of Cthulhu. You can't just push your rolls every time.
And
you can't just try again.
That's what I want to find. Where's the sweet spot? Because it's hard for the DM to always see it, but then it gets really dicey. It gets really dicey when your players start asking for it.
Yeah.
You know, so there's this balance where it's like, hey, you can definitely bring this stuff to my attention. I kind of like the rule where somebody else has to bring it to my attention. Somebody that isn't you. So if you had something screwed up, maybe somebody else is like, hey, maybe they could roll again because of X, Y, and Z. Because your teammates always want to help you out, right?
I love it when the team gets in and does all of that little bit. Sometimes it can get metagamey, like reminding them, hey, don't you have such what? Like, hey, that's on them to remember. You can't do that. But there are times.
But championing for your co-worker or your co.
It's like, but wait a minute, didn't we? Didn't you say he did really well with that one NPC? Wouldn't they have given him an inspiration? Like the times like that where it's like, I totally am okay with that. It's just you have to accept a loss every now and again in order to justify being able to push past loss. Because if you never lose, then you just never lose. Then there's no point.
And you're never overcoming anything.
Yeah, but if you've overcome enough losses and you're just like, this fucking time I'm done. I don't want to lose. That's the attitude I want. That's the attitude that gets you to not lose, right? That's the attitude that gets you to pass that test or to get that job after that interview, right? It's because it's the attitude of I won't fail versus the attitude of I just don't want to and I'm sad because I did.
You know what really does it for me? And I know this is hard to do for a player in the moment, but what'll almost get me to give you an inspiration instantly is when you play into your failure. If you play it out well, I don't care what happened. I want to reward you for that, because you're using that to help develop your character. You're using it to help, turn them into whatever, I like whenever I roll bad, kind of trying to almost cutscene a little bit and articulate how I screwed up. You know what I mean? Like, and make it true to my character. Make it true.
And that's
to
the other thing too. Is I think a lot of players, instead of wanting to look bad, they only want to not look bad instead of owning looking bad. Like you do. You take Dov, and if you go bad roll, you're going to do that bad roll in a Dov'd way. You are going to fail like Dov would fail. You're not just going to fail and look stupid. You're not gonna fail and try to chalk it up of like, oh, I'm just so cool, like I meant to do that. But you will fail in a way that is true to your character. Yeah, and that's the other thing is players need to be okay with failing in their character. Their character has their own unique way of failing.
Yes,
and people don't want that. They just want a character that never fails versus a character that fails in their own unique way. Needs to strike an equilibrium. Great fucking word, Cosmic. Thank you so much. That is a fantastic word. Good equilibrium in terms of what you need. Perfect. Facts. So going all the way back to his spell. So how are we going to rate this? Because I think it does deserve a rating. I don't think this is quite a showcase. I don't think this quite falls into the showcase. I do think that this falls into a homebrew review, even though it's not quite universally acceptable.
For sure.
I do have some reservations. So, I mean, obviously I have to knock a point off because it is too lore specific. It is, in a IP that isn't mine. So I wouldn't be able to use it in a high point anyway. So we got to knock a point off there. Outside of that, I will have to knock a point off for the... I will knock 1 point off for because I fundamentally disagree with the saving throw. So I think that's just going to be a point for me. It's just, as I see it, I would just remove the saving throw altogether. Or if I'm going to implement one, again, make it more realistic. If it's something you can drop instantaneously and get away from, I can understand the saving throw. If you're wearing it or if it's on your person, you wouldn't have enough time with an instantaneous spell. My personal preference. Outside of that, I will drop it another point, just because as of right now, the combination of a range and how it does its damage is just not a high point process. So I I'm going to just lump all of that part together. Instead of the damage roll felt like its own thing.
Yeah.
But the components, the casting time, the range, and the damage, I'm just going to kind of lump as overall mechanically, High Point works different. All of the items would explode themselves in their own way. So they, based on their magical item in High Point, they would all explode differently. The spell may or may not do extra damage, or it just triggers it. But again, in High Point, magical damage is just too much anyway. So it wouldn't matter. So 1, 2, so that would be 3 points off just for those purposes. Outside of that, okay, so Cosmo wants to know, do I get an inspiration point? It sparks a lot of conversation. I'm just trying to think, like,
what specifically does it inspire you to?
Yeah, like, do I want, I don't know if this inspires me to have, like, a nuke level spell. I don't know, just a devastating, like, just blow up, like, in terms of, like, what it does, I don't think it quite inspires me. What
about the exploding? Well, do you already have, technically in second edition, whatever the second edition standard rule base is for exploding magical items?
Yeah.
Do you already have that?
Yeah. So my actual damage output would again be based on what explodes and all of that, and
so for you, this would just say it explodes these magical items. And then
I would probably have it as within the radius. It would probably more or less be like what I said before. I would roll for how many starting from you out to your max radius, any item of that roll. So you'd get 10d12. So you would get, you rolled a 12, or so you get 12 items starting from you out. Every item up to 12 will explode.
Got you.
And then, that would be probably the way I would do it, because it would make the most sense. Because especially with the lore of, I would probably go along the lines of this spell is flooding it with magic. It wouldn't be divine magic in my realm, but it would be basically it would basically be a magical surge. This would essentially be an overload. I would probably call it overload or something like that.
Interesting.
Like magical overload. And essentially that's what you're doing. You are pushing out magic forcefully into anything that has been enchanted. And essentially, you're basically telling the enchantment to absorb. You're basically giving it absorbed energy, and it basically critical fails. It's like turning it up to 11. It just critical fails. That's how it would work in my realm. So
okay.
it would just kind of. That's why I'm just kind of focusing all of that, because then the range changes, the duration, all of that is just kind of all how magic operates. So I don't want to
that makes sense.
Each point up. Cosmic does like the magical landmine tactic. You thought of the divine items making the user immune, So those were two good ones from Kage, because I think you brought up both of those, like having the area filled with various
of magic items that he kind of plans
of rarity, so you can make like a just landmines, or you could just kind of make like a terrain that's under your control. And he also likes your idea of the current ones that have already been activated being immune.
Okay.
And I think that you were right on point with that idea. That's two ideas fantastic. So yeah, I'm trying to think of like, what has it really inspired me? Like, it's inspired me to discuss more about 9th level spells. But I'm trying to think of like, again, when I think of like inspiration of High Point, I think of, does it point out a deficiency or a vacuum in High Point? I guess is a better way to put that. Like, does it point out something that High Point needs, or now I want to put in High Point?
Almost like your what are they called again? The mantles.
Yes.
It's like it needs to be
exactly. So it's like in this particular case, I'm not in need of any 9th level spells. I'm not in need of a way to destroy magical items, because that's already a different process. I'm trying to think of like what else. I do like this idea of needing like divine materials for a spell.
Yes,
I like that idea.
And almost, especially if he does make the change of adding, like, say the people with that thing are immune to it, like the interaction of divine materials and how the spell would be affected by them, like having like certain people have, I like that idea of like certain spells, like the spell is great, but say if I have something on me that counteracts that spell. So if you have like maybe there, I like the idea of there being like counterbalances to like certain spells. Like in Magic the Gathering, you can be like immune to blue or immune to white or something like that. Like imagine you were able to do something that protects you from enchantment spells.
So basically you're saying that just like you have anti-magic field, there should be a anti-enhancement field.
I mean, perhaps.
Like, how cool would that be that you're a type of mage, you cast this, and anybody who casts magic around you doubles their range and damage?
That would be kind of cool, like an aura effect almost.
Just like anti-magic field, but it's the exact opposite. You're just any magic that gets cast around you, you're just pumping it. You are just a faucet filling whatever spell goes off with more magic.
Now,
just like the opposite of anti-magic field, which kills it all, you're just anything that goes off in your radius, you just
shoot. You better make sure the bad guys don't get close to you.
That would be kind of cool though. I'm trying to think here because I'm like it needs a lot for me. So it's like that's the thing. It's like I always have to be careful of like I want to give it a good score, but the score is not my personal opinion. It's its usefulness and high point. Like it's always the hard thing that I have to like use this is I don't want to give a bad score, but it's like it's not a bad score. It's just it's an honest thing of would I take this into high point? No, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't really inspire me to do anything. I might not be able to put all of that under one. Like the range, the components, the casting time, the duration, and the damage. Putting all of that under one category is a little generous. I might have to split that just because I have to admit that all of it would have to be changed. You know what I mean? Like, like for me in high point, it would all have to be changed. The overall idea, I will say this, like from a player point of view and a DM point of view, I actually really like this spell. I love the idea behind it. I love the narrative use of it and how it pushes the plot point along. I still want to know more about why the BBEG wanted this particular spell. Like, I still really want to know about that. But overall, I think it's a great spell and it belongs where it is. I just think it is tough to take this and try to expand upon it. It's hard to look at this as just another 9th level spell.
Right.
It's almost like this blends that difference because like we talked about this right before stream, 9th level spells are essentially supposed to represent the pinnacle of mortal magic, right?
Yes,
it is the absolute peak of what a mortal is capable of, the maximum amount of magic that they conceptually can handle and collectively manipulate. So this is almost an example of someone trying to teeter just past that, where it's like this has all of those components of a 9th level spell, but they're adding in divine magic, which almost sets it slightly apart. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost giving it that essence of this is truly a pinnacle of a 9th level spell because they're basically doing the starting steps of what would be a beyond a 9th level spell, which is basically god magic. And that's kind of what this is. So yeah, keeping that in mind, I really do like the spell. I as a player, I would not be upset coming across this, even in its current variation versus the variations that we've suggested. I wouldn't necessarily be upset coming across this in a fight. Like as the BBG battle goes, and then seeing what this was meant to do by activating my item, I'd be on board with this.
Okay.
As a DM running the game, knowing the situation and knowing what the players are going through. And knowing that, again, Cosmic had planned out that there's only 2 of these, I think it works. I think it works for that particular thing. I just don't think I personally have any use for it. I don't have a BBEG particularly like this. I don't have a god particularly like this. And I don't really see where I would want... I just don't see a need or a desire. Like, obviously, I have NPCs who would be like drooling over the idea of just destroying magical items in a flash.
Right.
But realistically speaking, for someone to dedicate the time in High Point to do that, like, that is dedication. You know what I mean? Like I'm all about lore. That is a lifelong that you have basically vowed something. And this is going to make that
Do
vow.
we know what, like, race this BBEG is? Like, do we have
don't.
any idea, like, potentially how old they are?
He is from a different dimension, like a whole other plane of existence. Remember? He is not part of this place. He's from somewhere else. So we know that he's like one of a kind.
Okay.
Which again is another reason why he could probably know this kind of magic, right? Then it goes into that. So I think, yeah, it's really hard for me to think about what could drive someone to the brink of this. That's not already a god. Like a god could do this. If a god really wanted to come down and just do that, they have the power. So for a mortal to say, I'm going to dedicate multiple lifetimes, become immortal or become, long-lived, to learn to do this and then not be stopped along the way. Like, the idea of like, how do you get away with this without anybody noticing?
Right.
There's so much in that I, as a DM, don't see a worthwhile plot line. I guess if that's the better thing. Like, because, it's not about, I don't write campaigns or anything, but when I look at like the bigger evolving world, regardless of my players.
Right.
The plot line of High Point, what's going on, the people in power, what I have planned for the future, the storyline, the evolving world that I have, this idea just doesn't fit. Like, it just doesn't really work for a like a BBEG approach. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it'd be kind of like mixing genres of like, having RoboCop go after terrorists with a nuclear bomb.
Right.
It really wouldn't make sense unless those terrorists were held up in like a city hall of Detroit, right? Like, you wouldn't have him on you wouldn't have RoboCop flying a plane into Washington D.C. to go take, like, those are things that his genre is street crime, right? You expect RoboCop, you expect him to be on gritty streets fighting, like just thugs.
Right.
Whereas you expect your superheroes to go fight, terrorists with, a nuclear bomb. And, you expect agency level, like, like government agency. You don't expect a robot street cop, right? And that's kind of what I feel about this with High Point. It's great for what it is. Like, RoboCop's not a bad movie, but RoboCop doesn't.
I actually really like that movie.
Yeah, but RoboCop wouldn't fit in the Matrix. It wouldn't fit in the Avengers.
That's fair.
It's not that neither are a bad movie by themselves, but you just can't mix them. You can't put them together.
They don't belong in the same necessarily world.
Yeah, like the Avengers wouldn't go after the BBEG of RoboCop, and vice versa. RoboCop wouldn't go after the Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. That's where this comes in. It's like throwing this in High Point, I'd almost have to force it. So it's just, for me, it's like I want to play it. I want to be in the world with this. But it's not your world. Yeah, I just can't fit it to High Point. Which is, again, it's always unfortunate. Like, I mean, I always like to see what I could be inspired of. And again, I never want to come across as like condescending of, this isn't good enough for High Point. High Point would never use this. No, it's not even that it's not good enough for High Point. I just can't fit it. I just can't think of a situation where this would make sense to plotline it. You know what I mean? Like, whose history, where are they, how long did it take? All of that just doesn't really fit with like what else could be done, I guess.
Right.
So taking all that into account, if I'm going to be really honest with it, I like a lot of the ideas. And I will say it gave us a lot to think about. So it's not very far off. There are aspects about it that are usable. Like, again, I could see mechanics about it that are usable. So it's not completely like out of the realm of this has no belonging in High Point. It's just, I wouldn't use this particular spell. I might not even use it as a spell. Like I said, I might even use this as just not call it a spell. Kind of like, again, it might be a spell mechanically in game how the BBEG uses it. Like, he might cast it, but I would essentially just turn this into that character's legendary action. Gotcha. Just like we've talked about giving players heroic actions that I'm very, very, very interested in developing and actually probably going to start giving out, is players after like 10th level being able to do things like enemies, where they can just have an action that they just do that does stuff. I think this has that kind of a place in High Point. I think this wouldn't necessarily be a 9th level spell, as it just would be a magic thing that this guy can do. Because that, we've talked about that before too, where it's like, there's nothing that says that people aren't actively crafting and creating 9th level spells. You just don't know about them yet.
Right.
But to me, that's where I would just in lore wise delimitate. Those are spells that they're creating, but I wouldn't necessarily call them like spells. Like they are magic that they can do, but to me, a spell is more like something that you can now have.
And I get
and
that.
It's stupid. It's stupid, pedantic.
It's not necessarily because I feel like that makes sense because when you think about like every time I talk to one of my players about something somebody else did, they're like, "Oh, can I do that? Oh, can I?" That's always the first thing, and articulating that. Yes, but no. Like, no, you can't just get this as a spell you can cast, but he did all of these things to be able to do this here.
Exactly.
And if you would like to do all these things to do that somewhere specifically, then perhaps you could figure it out, right?
And that's where I would just eliminate that this could be in High Point. It wouldn't be a spell in the sense that you wouldn't be able to go find it on a scroll and add it to your book. But it would work like a spell. It's just only the that BBEG would have it.
Right.
And I allow those things, right? Like Dovd. Dovd can do things that nobody else does and can do. Not because they're not possible. It's because I'm not going to just start letting people do what you thought of. I would have to justify that that NPC came up with that idea. Or if another player came to me and said, hey, if I were a bender, what if I were able to do the things that we've talked about with like your parkour? And if they fully came up with it on their own, be like, I'd allow it because I already have. But I'm not going to be like, no, you can't do that. Only Dovd can. Be like, well, right. You created the idea all your own. Dovd created the idea all his own. Other benders probably thought of that too. But it's not a, it's not like a...
it's a standard thing. It's not just a feat you can just go get.
It's not part of that class because not everyone in that class automatically would think about that. So kind of the same thing about that, right? Yeah. Not everybody with the same skills does the same thing with it. Like how many people that can draw, but how many people draw the same? Like there's tons of artists out there.
So many different styles, so many different...
That can draw, that can paint, but you look at another artist and they cannot draw or paint the same way, but they can draw just as well. And that's, I think, kind of like with magic users, right? There's a difference between being able to create something that you can reproduce and just being able to be an artist that says, I can do this thing. And I think there is room for that. I think there's room for that for players. And I think that's where heroic actions come in. Whether it's a magic users, I think they should have a heroic action that's magic based, like a spell, like an innate spell that only they get. They crafted it themselves. Maybe fighters get an extra attack or they get a specialty attack, right? Like, there's so many different things that I think people could build into their character that should be customizable, not to the class, not to the race, but to that player. That player's experience crafted this outcome.
Yes.
Just like that, yes. BBEG has a legendary action. Why does he have that legendary action? Because he's lived in this location long enough that he knows how to manipulate the terrain. He knows that magic, like those are the things that don't really get represented in player builds because the closest you get is defeats. But if I can take the same feat as you, we could technically have the same build. There will be, at the end of the day, outside of personality, nothing can make your nice character any different. If we build the same character, other than personality, technically they'd be identical. And that kind of sucks sometimes. Other than personality, there really wouldn't be a way to tell you and me apart, but there should be, because you should have some skill that you use some slightly differently than me. Whether it's how you hold your staff, how you run, how you jump. There should be something that you can do slightly better than me, and there should be something I can do slightly better than you. And that's what differentiates. You and I have learned the same thing, but we've learned fundamentally different things.
And we've learned our application of that same thing in unique ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we've learned. Yeah, that's a much better way to put it. We've learned the same thing, but to apply it is different. And that, I think, is a perfect way that you could build a character better, is to have those things where it's like, even just have them at like 10, 15, and 20, or just 10 and 20. You know what I mean? Just things to look out for that really are going to uniquely set your character apart, even from the next time you play that character. Let's say you want to recreate that build, but every level 10 and 20, you have to create a brand new unique feat, you know what I mean? Or unique ability based off that character's history and how you play them, not based on your build. There's so many things. But we're getting off topic. I think I'm just delaying because my brain's been trying to do math. So I think that it has a lot of merit. I think that I want to play it, so I'm going to give it some bonuses because I do want to play it. I just can't. I just got to be honest. It has no place in High Point. as it is. So I think we're going to land down the middle of the road and give this a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
Because it has a lot of redeeming qualities. I think it's a great idea for the lore that it's in. I think it really, even all of the balancing that you and I have discussed with it, I still think it fits into its lore. I don't think it really needs changing. It's not necessarily what I would do. But like I said, I think it fits in the lore. As a DM, I wouldn't mind running this. I would be super interested to see what the party coming into this encounter, how many of them have their scales already activated, how many don't, what are their life caps. Like, I'd really be, as a DM, very interested to know when I would trigger these. Like, I think if I had one's within the first 3 rounds. I know if I'm not starting the battle with this, if they don't just walk in the door, I'd be like, greetings, now the game can begin. Explosions. So they die and then immediately come back and go, okay, now the fight begins. Either something like that, or really early on, I want to set the precedent of this is going to be a hard fight. And if you don't die in the first one, no, I got one more.
Imagine I kind of look at this like they come into the BBEG fight. They start fighting this guy. He's throwing all of what he considers his little stuff at them to whittle them down, get them just below like half health or something,
just
like
to make
that.
sure this clears them out.
Just to make sure that you're gonna go down when I drop this, and then I drop it, and then whew, and then I think maybe one of them will be up and I just got to handle one guy. And that's no big deal for me. He's likely not going to be the healer, be able to bring everybody else up. And then everybody else pops the fudge back up. And I'm like...
So also consider this. Like, you have the 2. Consider this is how you start the fight. Like, you let them get in. There's like monologues. You're just chit-chatting. The BBG's doing is like, walking back and forth. Battle's not even like remotely started yet. You're like, it's kind of just everyone's just, guards are down. You're chatting. Maybe you don't even know this is the BBEG yet. Maybe you do. Maybe he's behind glass. But imagine like you're in this like pristine place. Again, this is the cutscene. You're talking to him, and then he's just like, well, if that's how you must have it, I wonder how you'll be without all of your items. And then he casts the spell as the initiative. Like, he casts the spell that happens.
That's the surprise round, basically.
And then initiative begins, because then you could have that moment where it's like he just sits there laughing until the smoke clears. The pristine room is now difficult to, like, you could do the whole thing where like you literally change the battlefield,
the grounds,
and then as he stops laughing, as he sees X number of you still standing, glowing with this ethereal light, and then as your buddies are down there dead, seemingly just exploded, you see bits of light glowing as they get up. They're fine, and they have new weapons and armor just like yours, and then you all face the BBG. Roll initiative. Like something like that. I would either start the fight with it, or very early on, and again, I would make it a little bit more spectacle. I would like do a spectacle to start the spell off, hit them first. So if I needed to hit them again, the same spectacle would occur. Some sort of like trigger of letting them know, oh, he's pulling out a spell. Oh, these words sound very familiar, guys. Like, as he starts it, like, just to kind of get them ready for it's going to happen again. But again, it's that whole, where's the story going, right? I want them to either fear this thing right away or get a taste of it and fear it again. Like, it's just that whole buildup. I think that this kind of spell as a DM, I would absolutely either just use this to build up the fight as in just release it and let the fight start on just a high adrenaline rush because you thought you were about to die. Your character was dead. Battle didn't even start and your character was dead, but then you get to come back. Mm-hmm. That's an adrenaline rush for a player.
Yes. Yes.
Or warn them about it early and then like do a common one or do the legendary one first and then let them worry about it and then be like, oh, I can do it too. Common. Like you just like give them warnings to worry about that spell again. So that would be my approach.
I like that.
As a player, I would be jaw dropped if I didn't know about this. And yeah, I would be, if this spell went off, I would just be like,
what?
What explode?
Gone?
I would just look at my character sheet and just be like, I would just not have anything to say. That bag of holding gone. Like, I just as a player, that would just literally, and again, the only time it would really hurt is if it literally just tilted the entire battle against me. Like, if I'm a fighter with a sword and I lose my sword but get a shield. So I can't fight, but now I can defend. Like, if the whole thing just ruined my character build, that's the only way as a player I'd be worried. Outside of that, I think this would be...
Especially because I feel like even though there is some after BBEG play, especially because this is like the end, right? Those common items, okay, those other items, and yeah, maybe you might drop
preps you for Ascension. It totally preps you, getting rid of all of your, moral,
earthly,
yeah. It preps you for that. Yeah, and again, it's like there is Game Plus after that, but I think this is one of those moments where it's like, without having to worry about it being scripted, that is definitely going to be one of those memorable things after this BBEG fight. Game Plus or no, whether the game continues after this or not, that's going to be remembered. When all of their items fucking blew up and half their team died, that's going to be the moment. Or again, if you start the battle with that, like, can you imagine that story? Like, bro, this one BBEG battle fucked us up. Battle didn't even start. All of our items exploded. 3 of us dead. Like, can you imagine? Just hear that story and not beg no.
I'm imagining Cosmic in the chat coming and telling us that this happened to him.
It's like, oh my god, the craziest.
That's how he rolls. Exactly.
Like, seriously, like I could just, if someone came to me and just be like, yeah, dude, battle didn't even start. All of our items exploded. 3 of us were dead. I'd immediately be like, and you're stopping there? Why? More info. Like, I would just be so much more like, what do you mean?
Right.
All your items exploded. Like, yeah. So I think it's well deserved. I think it fits super well in its lore. I think that it has potential to go in a lot of different directions. I do think that it is not quite perfect for a 9th level spell, but it is very close. I think any one of those things that we've mentioned could tilt it in the right direction, not necessarily all of them. I mean, we tend to do that. We tend to dissect a lot of it.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's really great. I can't really use it. So it's going to be that way sometimes.
Hey, it still looks good. And I know Cosmic is likely going to be worried. So I checked for him.
He actually already asked. He already asked in chat.
I didn't even look at the chat.
He already asked in chat. And I already knew you were going to go for it. That's why I didn't mention it. That's why I didn't say it, because I already knew you were going to check for him.
Listen, I got you.
Because he's always worried about his average going down.
Your average is it's a 7. You are at I don't have the 0.2s. I don't have the decimals or anything.
We don't have it in decimal form, but you still rocking
at the very least a 7 out of your average is 7, and that's not including the full set because there's a rating for the full set, and that's not including the one that's unfinished. I don't remember which one that was.
That is true. Yeah, which one was unfinished?
Let me go look. I just filtered.
It's been a while. Cosmic, you're gonna have to finish that up and submit it to us.
I know, right? We gotta give that sucker a rating. Our leaderboard.
It'd be an amusing topic of a discussion with other D&D friends, not in that specific group. Oh, the pinnacle is what is unfinished.
Yes,
so we have to get that one
the
resubmitted.
Okay. Legitness. I'm still working on writing up a lot of Cosmic's old items to get them added to the leaderboard and actually have the new format and stuff like that. But
I think it's good. I think it's also a good point, Cosmic. Like, yeah, anybody, like, this would be a fun story to tell if you weren't in that gaming group. Like, you wouldn't be able to, like you might bring it up and be like, oh, man, that BBEG fight, like, gosh, boom. Like, you wouldn't really, like, talk about the details like that, but yeah.
You just look at your
going to anybody else, though, like, if you guys are, like, if 3 of the 5 party were, like, hanging out with friends and be like, oh, guys, do you remember the item magic? Like, do you remember the items exploding? It could just be, like, that inside thing that they're just like, oh, my God, it's not as bad as that. Or like they'll just like do those little sly comments like they're in another gaming group and be like, oh, I'm gonna lose that magical item. It's like, it's better than all of them exploding. You know what I mean? Like, just like little like things that they'll always just remember. Be like, yeah, I've had it worse.
Facts.
All right, yeah. So there we have it. There is yet another one from KosmycPurge down on the list. Once again, I think at this point with Homebrew Review, we have only one item left, right? One item for next week.
We got
on his board.
His board's next classless or subless class.
Oh, the other subless class.
That's true.
This is going to be the aberration, the one that goes with the one that we reviewed last week. So that'll be really fun. Talk about ending with a bang. Yeah.
So
yeah, thank you so much, Cosmic, for submitting that. That was well deserved. Sorry for the wait, but yeah, no, fantastic. If you do decide to make any changes or any alterations, I would love to know what you end up doing. Pop that in the Discord for us.
So I do have a question for you, Cosmic, because this is something that I recognized when you submitted it, but I forgot to ask you earlier. If you look right up there next to 9th level, it says unspecified, and that's because I'm not sure what school of magic
gotcha.
This spell technically falls under. So I'm curious what school of magic you qualify this.
This would probably be...
I was trying to determine it, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's not conjuration.
I don't think it's conjuration.
Unless you're considering conjuring the magic like overflow. I mean, evocation probably. Most evocation spells are the explodey ones.
That's honestly what I was thinking. A lot of the high damage dealing spells are evocation.
I mean, even though this one's not really doing damage, but what else does it really fall under?
I would say that the weapons are doing damage and it's just causing the items to explode. So I want to say enchantment, but not exactly. Like, kind of, maybe.
I mean, you could abstractly call it an enchantment indirectly, because you are enchanting it with more magic than it can handle, if that's your preferred method of understanding. Cosmic doesn't know either. He just didn't want to be inaccurate. So
that's
fair point. It's always better to go nothing than be wrong. I would probably say evocation, because you're just, you're evoking the magic within and making it explode. Even if you're not over infusing it, you're basically reaching out, invoking the magic inside and saying, hey, release.
Yes.
So I would say evocation makes the most sense.
I would say closer to anti-enchantment than enchantment. But,
yeah, exactly. And and then same thing as it's like a you can even call it an evocation, because it's almost like opposite. Instead of summoning something, you're undoing it. So yeah, I would definitely be interested to know if you do make any changes to that, Cosmic. But otherwise, I think it will be a lot of fun to throw that at your players, quite literally and figuratively.
Right.
Oh man, just literally throwing that at your players just made me think of just slight modification to some of the verbiage on this. Make the ball a lot smaller, or make the sphere a lot smaller, and turn it into something akin to the Spirit Bomb from DBZ.
Oh my god!
You just take it and then you just throw this sphere, and anything it touches, just like any magic item it touches, it explodes.
I was thinking about literally throwing a magic item, because right now it's a bonus action. Literally throwing a magic item in their face and then being like, pow, let's go. That would be the only reason I would love this as a bonus action.
You know what? If you could make this a 5th level spell and do the cone version,
that would be
so it only hits like one magical item in a cone of your choice. So you could just literally toss a magical item, hit the cone, and be like, "That's the item I want exploding," and then just poof. That could be fucking dope.
Especially if the higher the magic item, the bigger the radius. Imagine like a legendary items like a size of like a gigantic creature or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
That would be crazy. All right. So we have that one down. Thank you so much, Cosmic. Do appreciate that. We have one for next week. And do we have a topic for this Friday?
I don't know if specific. We had some
mentioned something last week. We mentioned something last week because we did meta magic, right? We've done meta magic.
We've done meta magic. I put two. Well, I put one in the chat, but there was another one that you were wanted to talk about on our stream on Friday.
That's what I'm trying to think of. Like, I don't remember if I wrote it down or if you wrote it down.
I wrote one of them down and I put it in our topics chat. But there was definitely another one that I didn't write down.
The ritual. Yeah, we wanted to talk about ritual casting more. I think that's just more of like an open topic. What did we? I might just have to watch the stream.
Go back over it again a little bit. Yeah.
And then I did come up with a new interesting idea the other day, like 2 days ago. So it was over the weekend. It was like a shower thought. I think
I love those.
And I was thinking about it because do you remember when we were introduced to the alternate HP concept of life points, or the alternate of death saving throws of life points? It was Lucifer who had introduced us to it, where instead of death saving throws, whenever you go below XP, below 0, you would basically lose permanent life points. So it's not like your HP, but it's this pool that you always have.
Well, there's some like scar mechanic to it.
It was the idea was that the more veteran you are, the less you have, because the more you've used. So you use them when you're young, and then you have less. So that's why veteran and warriors are more cautious. It's supposed to explain like the more you age, the less vitality you have, and the less you can, because you've already given it all. Mm-hmm. So there is that idea that you have this like pool, and that's basically once you've used it up, you can no longer fight, right? So I started thinking about that, and I'm like, that's a nice idea, but it doesn't quite tell the full story, right? Mm-hmm. So I had this idea for what if we modified how XP works?
Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, I love you. But I had this idea of what if XP was slightly modified to work like a bell curve? And I call it bell curve XP. So at the start, it works like normal. It's always improving, right? It's always a good thing. The more XP you get, the better, right? So you're going up the bell curve and you're leveling up. Everything's going good. You're getting feats. You're getting that. And maybe like 10th level, 15th level. Now, as you get XP, it starts to have slightly diminutive effects. You're still leveling up. You're still doing all the normal stuff. But XP now comes at a cost of aging, scarring, traumas, things that you can add to your character's personality. But like the idea is the more you get XP, the more you've seen, the more you've been through. So at a certain point, it stops becoming good experience for your character. Like you're gaining new knowledge and you're becoming a better person. And there's that tipping point to where you get more XP, and the more bad things you've seen, the more it ages you, the more fights you've been in, so the more scars you have, the more you have trauma, like the more you may not like certain races. Like if your character's always fought kobolds, maybe you just now have you see a kobold, you just automatically are on tense high, right?
Interesting.
Like I just this idea that life points had this concept of the older you got and the more experience you got, the more it wore on you. And XP, and like this kind of has that, but like I just was thinking, like, yeah, early on XP is great, right? The more you do, the more you get better. But there's a tipping point to where you don't really get better; you just get more tainted. You get more jaded, right? You don't really get.
I get that better to a certain extent. Would that be?
That's what I say. It wouldn't be like halfway through. It would be like starting at level 15. Like it would be towards the end of the game. So it's end game, because again, that's when you're still needing max, like high XP to level up. So that's why it's like later in the game, it's like every level up or every 2 level ups or every 10,000 XP, you have to age a year or gain a scar or add something to your, like it would be very difficult to format.
Like, yeah,
but
actually,
this concept of a bell curve
like,
XP, I wanted to come up with. I don't know if we can ever have like a full discussion on it on an episode.
Yeah.
But it was just a cool concept of like, how can you retrofit XP to like show that over time it is getting at you, right? Because we always just talk about the character just gets better, and that's not really what it should be. Like you look at warriors don't just get better and nicer and more good looking. Like things happen to them in various ways, and D&D doesn't represent always the bad things that could happen to you over time. And these don't have to be detrimental. They don't have to like hurt your character or your build.
Right.
But I would like to, but like you said, like you can make Dovd fail in a Dovd way. You could also make Dovd kind of an asshole in a Dovd way over time. Like Dovd is a nice guy, but he can have an asshole tendency in situations if he's had too many bad experiences, right? Maybe he's short with certain people. Maybe he's just more aggressive on certain topics. Like these are the things that I would like to see XP like represent, of just that concept of you are now, and maybe it's not XP, maybe it's, level related. Maybe you just need to start doing this at later levels.
Right.
But I just thought like the bell curve XP concept, after a while, XP starts to give
I do like
things.
the idea of people recognizing that there is more to your character than just getting better and just being cooler, right?
Yeah.
I definitely don't want it to detract from the desire that they have to
I would never want it
up.
to make them not play their character the way they wanted to. It would just be more of your character can't stay the same always, right? Like you have to eventually evolve. So whether that, you don't have to not play your character, but you have to like show that your character is being affected. This could be kind of just that cool way of adding little things to character development.
Yeah.
Instead of just literally playing the same exact. I mean, again, this doesn't have to be for role play either. It could just be for, if you're not a big role player, this is just a way to spice up your character, to have them act slightly differently or take certain different actions.
I definitely like the idea of, I kind of like how in backgrounds they give you like options for like different features your thing can have.
Oh, like the traits, the flaws, things like that. Yeah.
I like the idea of bits of inspiration like that to help you latch onto ideas of who and what your character is. Like there was this one, I was playing like some Adventure League game, and you got these like pre-generated characters, and one of the things on mine that I like totally latched onto was you had died once before.
Oh, right? That's awesome.
That was it. You had died once before and came back, whatever. And so literally, like, every time my character introduces himself, he's like, "Hi, my name is Dagger. I died once before and I'm really trying not to do it again." Like that's his whole like every single time. Anytime
just
you
so you know,
into combat,
I've been there, done that, don't want to do it again.
anytime you talk to him, he finds a reason to like mention that. It's like, yeah, I died once. Or anytime someone's talking about taking damage, he's like, you took damage. Well, guess what? I died once. You know, it's just all the time.
That would be so annoying, but so great for a character.
It's dumb. It's little, but you know, it also affects like his decision making. Like if there's something like significantly dangerous and there's a high probability he's gonna die, he's probably gonna freaking say no because he's really trying not to do it again.
Like playing the character,
yeah,
like the appropriate way, and not just playing the character to get the most out of it, right?
Yeah.
So that might be a future topic. We'll have to watch last week's stream to figure out what we're going to talk about next Friday.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Do you remember?
Of course. Yes. Psionics. We're going to talk about.
There you go.
I have the book right over there. That's why the book wasn't up here. No, of course. We are going to be talking about. We're going to dive into officially psionics. I'm even thinking we might on stream, just for the hell of it, like draft up a psionic character just to kind of like. Run the numbers and show how the like we'll just have you
should
like
let me draft one up as a potential character.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, we'll just have we'll draft up a character and then we'll be able to show you guys like how the PSP works, how the pools work over certain levels, and how you can start to like we'll go over like, hey, now that you're level 5, what would you choose, to show people how you learn the different psionics and how at what level you start to see the combos. So I think that would be a really fun episode for Friday. So hopefully you'll be here this Friday for that.
For sure.
Hopefully you guys will be here for this Friday for that. We will be here next Monday with our last submitted homebrew review for right now from Hisbor. Hopefully you guys will submit some more for us. What is going on, Freeman? How you doing? Do we play any other TTRPGs besides D&D? I have dabbled in Call of Cthulhu, which I really, really like their mechanics. I love the much more role play. Like when I really just want a more role play game, like I'm just role playing and not really worrying about the paper, not really worrying about like the stuff, and I just want to like be a character. Call of Cthulhu is amazing. I would love to get into that more. I just don't have the capacity to memorize a new game set.
Dive fully into another whole rule set.
So what I really am trying to do is I'm trying to currently I'm actively trying to work on areas of high point where I can use that concept for gameplay instead of like, you know, like certain locations. If you're going to be there,
I like that.
Throw out all of the character sheets and just be like, look, here's what you need to focus on. Let's just role play it. Like,
I honestly kind of like that for like giving my players a taste of something different. There was this one gameplay I saw on this program called Roll20, not Roll20. What's it called? Dimension 20.
Oh, Dimension 20. Yes.
By this DM named Brenda Lee Mulligan, and he's got a lot of.
Oh yeah.
And he does a lot of cool stuff. And he played in this completely different system where it was actually based on like a D6 die.
Yep.
And like there was a whole. I would love to like say my players go into a dream world or some other dimension. Like you play by this new set of rules. You got new abilities and stuff like. I forget what that actual gameplay was called, but I would love to look it up and just take little bits and pieces of it because it was super simplistic. It was very straightforward, and it allowed for some really cool things to occur in the game. If you can
watch Call of Cthulhu gameplay, No Rolls Barred did an amazing. They did two episodes. No Rolls Barred is the YouTube channel. They did 2 different episodes with Call of Cthulhu, and it was them. It was that. Watch through both of those. I watched both. I mean, I never watch like YouTube videos more than half an hour, and even then I never finish them. These both are like 2 hours long, and I watched all of it, both episodes. The way they played this game was really fantastic, really good DM, really good players, but the concept behind the game, the storytelling, and the way that the players actually role played, there was never really pause or downtime. It was constant gameplay, and it really wasn't a lot of that.
Do you feel like that was a lot more because of the players or a lot more because of the game?
I think the players are very, very good. I've watched them in other things, but based on the editing, I could kind of get a feel because I've watched other episodes. I feel like there was a lot less editing out in terms of like, you know, you see where people are sitting, where, you know, like how their clothes are. You could tell if time's passed in between cuts. Like if, you know, they cut out like 10 minutes versus a few seconds. For the most part, it seems like that one was pretty smooth. Like again, it's more about people just living the character, like having fun, just embodying the character. The roles are super minimal, only when you really need to do certain things, and the rules are basically just acted out. Like everything is really just about what you are doing, how you're playing your character, how you're getting your objectives done. The rolls are just there as a highlight, not as a core aspect. Like you're not rolling every time you do something. You're only rolling when it really suits one of these certain factors that your character has.
Interesting.
And really if the DM deems it necessary. And then there's like one of my favorite mechanics is being able to push a roll. I really want to add this somehow in D&D, but it's very hard because players will abuse it. But like, let's say you fail a roll, you can do what they call pushing. So it's like you want to make a charisma check or an investigation check and you failed. You can, in Call of Cthulhu, you can do what you call pushing. And basically it's kind of like being able to redo the check, but you can't do it the same way. So it's like if you were to use a certain, if you were to be like, I want to use insight on this guy, you failed. Okay, well, you can't use insight, but I want to use persuasion to tell me, to let him know if he's, lying. Like, I want to convince him to tell me the truth, right? So that would be two different ways. You can push the roll by attempting it again, but in a different method. So it's all role play. You just have to reapproach it with your character, and then again, if you fail again, you actually get like insanity points, and that's big on Call of Cthulhu. It's insanity points. You actually, if you get so much, you start to hallucinate. Your character will start to hallucinate. Shit will happen to them.
Interesting.
And again, a lot of this is based on the DM making sure the story is correct, letting every character know where they are, and everybody playing their character right. If you're hallucinating, I have to tell you what your hallucinations are, but you also have to work with them. You can't just be like, okay, cool, I'm hallucinating. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're gonna go over here now. Okay, we're going over there. Oh, yeah, my hallucinations are there too. It's more like you have to act like you see a strange man constantly following you. You have to act paranoid. Like the idea, if you're not acting paranoid, it's kind of game breaking, right? It's much more about everyone playing their part and less like D&D about just doing the actions. And that's what I really like about it. I would like to add that more into my D&D gameplay because I do feel like sometimes it leans more to the actions than the actual like character development. So
right,
but yeah, I haven't played a lot of TTRPGs that are outside of that. I mean, I've dabbled. I've played a Doctor Who one, Dresden one, and some like homemade ones. But yeah, I mean, D&D is pretty much like my bread and butter in terms of like mechanics and core rule sets. Let's see. You want to run a zombie-based builder RPG? Any advice? Systems I should use specifically? So a zombie builder, that's fascinating. I don't know of any TTRPG that has building mechanics.
I don't know of either.
Like hardcore building mechanics.
Yeah. I will say that one of my buddies is doing really good at researching supplemental things like outside of like core D&D. He's found a whole bunch of stuff for like building like strongholds, basically
there's info for
having
everybody.
Different rules for like rune smithing, different rules for foraging and all kinds of stuff. So there's probably something out there for that, I feel like.
Give me 1 second. I might have found something for you.
Is Freeman in our Discord?
Freeman is in the or they should be. Freeman,
awesome.
Did you finish up setup in the Discord? I got you something too, by the way. Is a role-playing game set... Okay, so is a role-playing game set in a world of survival horror, a world where dead have come back from their graves. You have no clue why, but they've returned, and you have to stop them. There's more to zombie. There's walking corpse. Busy button in your front door and scoping out, hoping the door doesn't give. It's not set. Different campaign settings, modern day apocalypse, role playing games. What the hell? Yeah, this might be what you're looking for. So I'm gonna pop a link in the Discord for you, Freeman. There is a game, Chronicles of Darkness or Outbreak Undead 2 2nd edition. Oh, I haven't even heard of those. I just saw this one called All Flesh Must Be Eaten. So that's another TTRPG based off of basically waking up in a zombie apocalypse. Just kind of
interesting.
Dead started rising and you don't know why. There's another one called Zombie World. It's a narrative-driven TTRPG. Let's see. Zombie World TTRPG from Maxi Games. Magpie Games. So there's another one for you. Yeah, this is actually really cool. I haven't actually really thought of a zombie-based one, but I mean, I'm definitely not surprised that they're out there. So hopefully those will help you at least zombicide. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah,
you said you put those in the Discord?
I just put them in his chat or in Twitch chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would definitely let us know if you find anything more. That's actually a cool concept. I mean, I've dabbled with the idea, but not just a focused one. Again, that's the weird thing is I hear about all these ideas and it's like I have so much things built in High Point for whatever players want to do, I don't have any core game that I would say I have a zombie apocalypse thing, but I have thought about how if a player wanted to play in High Point with zombies, it's there, it's available. I just haven't really fleshed out an entire game, but I have mechanics that will work for players who want to indulge. But I'm really curious to see what they would do because I've never really come across one that has building mechanics, actually foraging, crafting, building mechanics. So that would be interesting. Yeah, thanks for the info, man. Hopefully that'll work. But for Monday, I think that's going to be it for us. I think we're going to call it here. I think that was good. Cosmic, thank you so much for the other submittal. We do need more. We only have one more homebrew for next week, so we will need more, guys, before we have to go back to high-low. So if you have homebrew that you want to submit to us to have reviewed or showcased on Monday, you can go ahead and submit that into the Discord. We're back. Hang on. We're going to post the link in the chat right now for our Discord, so you can go ahead and submit items. You can submit topics for us to talk about, or you can just hang out and chat with the community. If you liked this episode and missed anything, or if you like this episode and want to see any of our other episodes, you can go to our YouTube channel where we have all of our VODs streamed there, and I'll post that link in the chat as well. So if you guys want to go check out any of our live streams, you can see that on YouTube. Otherwise, I think that is going to be it. Cosmic has submitted a topic for us. Fantastic. We do have a couple other topics that we will discuss over time. So join us this Friday for a deep dive into 2nd edition psionics. We're actually going to go over how they work. We're going to go over all the powers. Pretty much we're just going to go over the entire psionics handbook. That's pretty much what Friday's going to be, is we're just going to do the 2nd edition psionics handbook. We're probably even going to create a psionicist here live, or at least Kage will. So we'll be able to show you guys what a psionicist will look like at creation, and then at every 5 levels we'll just kind of show what would have happened as we built it and how it would
as you progress.
As it progressed. So join us for that. Hopefully you'll be there. If you guys want to make one with us, that would be fantastic. It'd be kind of cool to get the audience, everyone building a little slightly different one, so we can see the different combinations of what people chose, with feats and powers. And then absolutely. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that on Friday. We have a couple other topics that we'll figure out, and then we have one more item on Monday that we'll have to figure. We'll hopefully get some new submissions
from his board. I'm very excited.
Yeah, and that one's going to be interesting because that one goes in hand with the one we did last week. So yes, it's getting pretty late. I think I'm going to have to cut it there. We've already hit the 3-hour mark. So we do appreciate you guys. Let's see. We've had a lot of people in chat. Cosmic, thank you so much for showing up. Freeman, thank you so much for showing up. I think we saw Mind's Eye. They tripped out a little bit earlier there. And I think we had a bot promo person in the chat earlier as well.
Is that what that was?
That's usually how they start out, especially if they don't, if you don't directly interact with them right away, they tend to fizzle out. But usually I've been learning that a lot of the bot or the people who want to sell me something, they usually start off that way. And it's like,
oh, right.
It sounds a little bit scripted, but it's fine. All right, but yeah, that's going to be us. I appreciate you guys so much for being here with us. Go ahead and join the Discord. Let us know if you have any other topics that you want to hear us talk about, and please get those submissions coming in. We only have one more, and we do like to have those backed up at least 2 or 3 weeks because we're not really fans of high-low.
Right.
But yeah, I hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. I hope you guys have a great week ahead of you. Join us again 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time this Friday for the entire deep dive on the 2nd edition Psionics Handbook and how to make a Psionicist in the 2nd edition. Thank you guys so much. That's going to be us. Cheers.
Deuces, my friends.